You.
All right.
All right. Let me press the. I'm gonna go live.
Okay.
Okay, we are live.
Oh.
Hello, everybody. Hello,
Hi.
patrons. Thanks so much for joining us, Brian. You seem so surprised. I think I told you I was gonna press the button.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, well here we are. This is it. Got get your game face on. I don't know. you still.
I
Look
want
very...
to blow smoke out my nostril. You know, like the emoji. Don't know how.
Yeah, that's a good one. I never use it.
Yeah.
I guess that's what you use when you're angry. I just use the angry emoji when I'm angry.
No, that's not an angry emoji. It's like let's go.
Oh, let's do this. Oh
yeah, like sports teams like tweet that with their lines or whatever.
I see. Yeah, I've never. Let me know if I ever like say something or tweet something like on the Discord that you think in hindsight I could have used that emoji, because I feel like I just never. I don't think
it's often our vibe.
Yeah,
it's like
we've got a great crew here.
Feels like a testosterone filled vibe, and
I probably have some
of all sports podcasts. I might think that our combined testosterone level is lower than most.
I mean, we're about winning. I don't know. Is that like I want to win?
That's a low testosterone thing to say.
Is it? I don't know. I guess I don't want anyone to get hurt. So I guess does that mean? I don't know. All right.
Joe's got a joke for you in the chat.
Oh, is it good? Two guys who scored more couple points than Anton Forsberg and Cam Talbot combined.
We did.
Well, that's true. But then that's like it's funny, but it's like a negative. Why would I want to insult? Again, maybe this is my low testosterone. Why do I want to start the show by insulting Anton Forsberg and Cam Talbot? That's not very nice. But it is funny. But okay. We thought of a joke, which also I think won't. I shouldn't say also. Like we thought of something.
We'll
that
see.
I don't think it's
Joe, you tell us if your joke was better than that.
Good.
Yeah.
Actually, I was gonna write it out here. Brian, just make chit chat for just one minute, please.
Oh, okay. So, any questions in the chat? Any other two guys who just want everyone to
Brian,
have a good time?
I feel like your Travis Konechny actually doesn't work because his line mates are good. Like doesn't have no support. He's like they're doing.
Oh yeah, Joel Farabee and Noah Cates, no doubt first liners. I guess it's based on some of like what I'm going to share when we talk about Konechny, is that like he is really.
What about the power play? He's got some help there. I would think if anything, it's like Clayton Keller.
Does he?
A player?
Who's the power play help? You can tell me JVR.
Tony D'Angelo is pretty amazing.
He's okay.
He's pretty fucking great.
Whoa. Now you're just trying to show I have testosterone.
Who's the player who produces the most with the worst line mates? That's what we need for the joke. Who is this person?
I mean, I think I've done a pretty.
All right, Konechny, fine, okay.
Go ahead, say Ryan Hartman. But like, we're better than Ryan Hartman.
Okay, yeah, exactly. We're all stars here. Okay.
Yeah.
Of a major network. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna work. Let's just start the show. Let's figure this out. Okay.
Just try it out, and if it fails, then we'll go leave a preemptive.
All right, let's do this.
Okay.
Yay! Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who like to think of ourselves as like the Travis Konechnys of hockey podcasts. Now we produce big numbers without even having the support of a major network or like awesome top liners to go with us. I'm your host, Neil Dubrowski. I hope that worked. Brian and I spent way too long workshopping that. With me for this Sunday mega show where we're going to break down everything going on that you need to know to be successful in fantasy. That's the injuries, that's the outjuries, hot streaks, cold streaks. I mean, that's pretty much it, right? But there's a lot there. It's my very good friend, the fantasy hockey robot, the Poobah prognostication, the IPP MVP himself, Brian Comm. Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Elon. Thanks for asking. Hello, everybody. Hello. Oh, you throw me off. You never start by asking me how I'm doing. I don't know if this is a newfound concern.
I'm trying to be a good friend here.
Thank you. I know you're still working on our TIFF from a month or two, the UPL. argument.
I mean, it was a one-sided tiff, but yeah. Anyways, how are you? Tell us though. I want to know. You know, I listen to other podcasts and they have like guests on. I guess you're not a guest, you're like my co-host, but they actually do kind of start the show with some sort of like, "How's your life?" And go, "Oh yeah, I had a good weekend. Like the family, we went to the whatever." It's like a lot of shows start like that.
What breeds success? Although I will say, I took my kid skating. She just turned 4 on an outdoor rink for the first time this year, on any rink for the first time this year. She did not like it. Like she was not happy at all. She's regressed since her last skating outing last year. And I showed her a video of her skating last year being like, hey, like afterwards, like, hey, you could do this. If anybody has tips on teaching a 4-year-old to skate happily outside, who doesn't like being outside because it's cold and is terrified of falling, even though I fell like on purpose 40 times in front of her, please, I need tips. Send them at Keeping Karlsson or
or your private Twitter. I don't know if I need to see these.
Well, that's what I want. You told me to be human, to share something from my life. I did. And it was so relevant enough to the show. Also, for our intro,
when I'm at work and I see like coworkers and I'm like, "How are you doing?" They usually just say, "Good. How are you?" And I say, "Pretty good." And then we keep on walking.
That's how I started. And you're like, "Well, some podcasts start with chit chat and they talk about their weekend and what they did with their family." I'm just trying to follow instruction here. Also, Blue Wire is our network. They are a major network, Elon, and they
okay, well, I didn't mean like that. I mean like we're self-produced. Obviously, like, yeah, we appreciate the support of Blue Wire in like they're hosting our show, all that stuff. But you know, it's not as if we're like getting some awesome like famous people being like, check out the latest episode of Keeping Karlsson. We're, you know, or whatever. We don't have like fancy editors. I'm not able to just be like, oh, cut that in post, Peter, and then we have Peter in the back like, don't worry, I got you. It's like we don't have that. But anyways, I'm not complaining. I just had to come up with a joke to start the show. But now, Brian, we've gone way too long without talking about
the start of the show has now become a joke.
Okay, exactly. So let's just get moving. As soon as we first mentioned that we are super happy to be presented by another partner we have that I maybe gave a short shrift to, dobberhockey.com. They're fantastic. It's a site that I use. It's my support for preparing the show and for any success that I have in fantasy hockey. I love the articles. They have really smart people writing over there. Plus the tools at Frozen Tools cannot be beat. So check it out, dobberhockey.com. But with that, Brian, yeah, let's just get right into it. Okay, we're going to just go through a bunch of stuff. I will say quickly, a quick, I don't know, promo for myself. I dropped a new show that's in your feed right before this one. The, oh man, now I'm forgetting, what did I call it again? The Matchup Maximizer is the name of the show as of now, working title, where, yeah, that's going to be our new Sunday morning show for a little bit. And I tried to walk through like the games for today and like who would you maybe want to stream in to like get that last piece you need to win. And then also looked at the schedule for next week. So definitely open to some feedback there. I hope people liked it. My voice is still kind of sore from all that talking. So Brian, you're gonna have to maybe carry the load today, but I'll get the ball rolling first with the talking by talking about some injuries and outjuries. And let's start on the outjuries. Let's go to Washington. Okay. Because Nicklas Backstrom and Tom Wilson are both back. And like when I was preparing the show yesterday, we still hadn't seen any line combinations. Like I have no idea who's playing with who. And now I'm sitting down here. I see that it's 1-0 for Washington against Columbus in the third. And neither of these new returning players have gotten any points. The only goal is by Eric Gustafsson, assisted by Nick Dowd and Garnett Hathaway. So almost a schmold. Obviously, now Gustafsson has become someone that's on a lot of rosters. But yeah, let's check out last game lines here on Frozen Tools. So Kuznetsov, Tom Wilson, and Strome. Then Ovechkin with Sherry and Nicklas Backstrom. So very interesting, right? I would have thought that Kuznetsov or Strome or Backstrom would be like the third line center, but clearly they decided to put Kuznetsov and Strome together. So one of them is playing center. I guess Dylan Strome is winger eligible, so I'd imagine he just went to the wing. Okay, I'm going to tell you, Brian, I didn't expect this. Also, Ovi and Backstrom didn't play together most of last year. Even when Backstrom was healthy, it was usually Ovechkin playing with Kuznetsov. But I guess this season already, Ovechkin's been playing a lot with Dylan Strome. So we'll see how long these lines last. Like on one hand, it doesn't seem like they've produced very much. But on the other hand, they are winning this game. So I guess that's all that matters at the end. What do we think about these guys? I guess like a general question could just be like Backstrom and, you know, Tom Wilson. First of all, just like how excited are we for these players? Are they the types that we think are going to like, you know, now the people who drafted them or added them out free agency, like are just getting like a huge gain from getting them? Or is it good? And obviously they're two different players. You could have different answers, but yeah. Or is it more just like, yeah, maybe they'll help, but you know, don't get too excited.
I think it's more the latter. Like last year with Backstrom, when he was playing, there were a lot of like, should we hold Backstrom or should we let him go? What do we do with him? Backstrom on the whole had just a 54-point pace last season and 68 shots over 47 games. So that's like barely a shot and a half per game. He did have power play production, which was really the one place that Nicklas Backstrom was valuable. If you get a bonus in your league for either assists or power play assists, that's good. Otherwise, there wasn't a whole lot that he had to offer. And I honestly feel that he didn't, at 5-on-5 at least, distinguish himself very much from someone like Dylan Strome, who might help you some nights, probably won't help you most nights, and doesn't do anything else on the nights where he doesn't help you. So that's where I'm at with Nick Backstrom. I'm not terribly, I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic. I think he can still be a great power play producer because we haven't seen him stop being that yet. But my concern would be that it's not enough to really prop up really steady points or help for your fantasy team unless, 55 points is not chopped liver, and assists and power play assists are categories and leagues. And like I said, he's sort of like a specialist in those categories. So of course, depends on your format. And then Tom Wilson also depends largely on your format, right?
Yeah, actually, I'll interrupt really quickly. I'm just looking at the box score a little deeper. Tom Wilson currently has 5 hits
already. Yeah, in what has he played? He's played 12 and a half minutes, it looks like, and 5 hits. So that's a really nice start. This is a guy who threw 3 hits a game last season and has been doing something around 3 or 4 hits a game for, well, basically forever. So if that helps you and gets 55 points along the way, then yeah, absolutely Tom Wilson's interesting. We'll see if he can get up to a couple shots per game. Like if I'm picking between Tom Wilson and Nicklas Backstrom and there's no power play bonus or category or whatever in my format, I think I'd go Tom Wilson at this point, assuming hits are counted, because I expect Wilson to shoot more. And I assume Wilson's going to finish in the same point scoring neighborhood as Backstrom.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I feel like I like Wilson a lot, or I have over these last couple of years, because he was playing with Ovechkin, right? And that was helping get a lot of points. I think if these lines stick and Wilson is not on the top power play, I should mention the top power play today was Ovi, Kuznetsov, Oshie, Backstrom, and then Eric Gustafsson. So if Wilson's like not with Ovi at even strength and he's not on the top power play, he's just becomes maybe a guy who hits a lot. I don't know. Maybe we'll get like some points. Like, yeah, being in the top 6 is good, but he might not be like as valuable as in previous years. But again, this is like one game and it's not even like they're scoring a bunch of goals. So you could easily see a blender happening until the Caps settle on something. So I'm definitely not saying that like I'm done with Tom Wilson. And yeah, he is at least giving you those hits. But yeah, I'll be very interested to follow along. Also, I should mention TJ Oshie, by the way, I guess third line, but he was like there last year. Like, I think we know what Oshie is right now. He's also kind of a power play guy, but at least scores goals as opposed to Backstrom, who's more of an assist guy.
Right. Yeah. And I think just going back to Tom Wilson for a second, I think that's a really good caveat. If he's away from Ovechkin, then maybe all bets are off. And I would rather have Backstrom in that guaranteed power play production. But again, we could see a lot change. So keep an eye. The 2 things you're watching for is Backstrom holding on the top power play, and is Wilson playing alongside Ovechkin? If they both are, they probably hold some value in your format. Tom Wilson probably has value regardless of where he plays in any format that will reward his hits. And TJ Oshie, he just continues to be TJ Oshie, right? Yeah. Nothing great, nothing terrible, borderline rosterable at times, and sometimes rewarding in small doses.
By the way, since we're just talking about hits really quickly, I don't think we have the Ottawa Senators on the docket. I have a guy in my dynasty league, Parker Kelly. That guy hits a lot.
He hits a lot.
If you need hits and you're in a like a cap league, I'll take Parker Kelly over Tom Wilson for the cheaper contract.
Here's my question about Parker Kelly. Does he have 2 first names or 2 last names?
Well, Parker that's like one of those new types of names. Like I don't consider that a first name.
Okay, so 2 last names.
Yeah, I'd say 2 last names.
All right.
Okay. What else? Oh, I guess that's Ron Washington. Let's talk about Connor Sherry really quickly, just because he was on such a hot streak, right? He's really been gelling playing on that line with Ovechkin, and he's still on that line, which is good news, right? I think a lot of people were maybe worried that with all these people coming back, maybe that'll mean Sherry gets bumped down the lineup. And I guess, yeah, it obviously still could happen. But if it's going to be Sherry, Backstrom, and Ovi, then that's really nice for Connor Sherry, and probably he could keep up this pace at least somewhat, right? Like he has 9 points in his last 7 going into into today. No points today. Are you holding on at this point, or is he still kind of, to me, he's been like streamer level all year, but the last time I streamed him in, he did really well. Then I dropped him once his good schedule was over, and then someone else grabbed him, and he hasn't been dropped since. And I'm wondering, did I mess that up? Should I have just held on to Connor Sherry?
I think you were not wrong to drop him, but it's definitely bitten you if you let go of Connor Sherry at the wrong time. Yeah, now 9 points in 7 games, 8 of those being assists, and just 9 shots for Connor Sherry. He has 3 multi-point outings though in these last 7 games, so the points look good. His assists have been on going chronologically backwards, goals by Sonny Milano, Ovechkin, Gustafsson, Strome, Gustafsson, Milano, Ovechkin, and the majority of those assists have been primaries, which is great news for Connor Sherry. He's creating actually like meaningful scoring chances that are ending up in the back of the net. All of this, by the way, like this tear, 9 points in 7 games, that's gotten Sherry up to a 55-point pace on the season, which might be about where he belongs if he sticks with Ovechkin, which is not a safe assumption anymore now that we have so much influx in Washington. So I think similarly to Tom Wilson, his value comes if he is playing with Alex Ovechkin. And I think you've got to hold Sherry until he quiets down or gets split from Ovechkin, because when Sherry's quiet, he doesn't do enough to merit holding. And again, he's another player who's really similar. Like a lot of these Capitals, fantasy-wise, are very similar. Like Dylan Strome, also in this category. You know, you've got someone who's not doing much for you on the nights he doesn't score, and of course, Strome is on the top power player, has been. Sherry is not, so that's even less. So hold him through the hot streak. If you want, you can hold him through his time with Ovechkin, even if he does cool off over the next couple games. But once he's away from Ovechkin, that's when my interest ends in Connor Sherry.
Makes sense. Yeah. And but Dylan Strome, by the way, off the top power play now, I guess bumped by Backstrom. So that's another reason to maybe let go of him. And then I'll just mention one more player. Martin Fehervary is a guy we've never mentioned on the show before. He's not big for the offense, but we were talking about hits before from Parker Kelly and Tom Wilson. Fehervary is getting you hits and blocks. He's been a really good peripherals defenseman, like basically all season long. He already has 3 hits and 1 block today. In the last game versus Nashville, he had 4 hits and 6 blocks. So, got to give some love to the Bangers Leagues people out there. Maybe they already know about him, but I just feel like it's a name we've never said before. So cross that off the checklist. Martin Fehervary, a very good peripherals defenseman.
Yeah, he's like a top 5 hitter in the league right now. If you're looking at rates, he plays on the 3rd pairing, so he doesn't see like necessarily the volume of minutes to actually end up in the counts of top 5 hitting. I'm just actually looking, like I have his per 60 number here, but his actual number of total hits puts him in the top 15 instead of the top 5 because he's a 3rd pairing defenseman. So if his minutes ever increase and he gets to just keep doing the same role, then that's really great news. But even without that, like you said, Elon, he could be a nice deep cut for anybody looking to add hits, and Tom Wilson is not an option.
Okay, so let's go to some more outjuries now in Winnipeg. Of course, Brian, you talked about this on your great short shifts appearance with Jeremy, who's had a couple of great short shifts appearances of his own. Great job, Jeremy Versillo. And he'll be back for the rest of the month with Lewis, breaking down our short shifts episodes, our little amuse-bouches, as you say, in between the mega shows. So another reason to be subscribed to our podcast. We've got a lot of fun shows coming at you. And yeah, we're not slowing down, even though we're into the second, portion of the fantasy season. But yeah, you talked about Winnipeg. But let's talk about them some more now that we have a few games under our belt, including a huge 7-4 win today on Sunday versus the Canucks. They've got Ehlers, they've got Wheeler, they've got Perfetti back in the lineup. And today, you see like 7 Winnipeg goals. I have Wheeler in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. So I was like, all right, let's check out what he did. No points, no shots. What? Okay, well, that's okay. I also have Mark Scheifele. Also no points on 7 goals. Everything came from this line of Dubois, Ehlers, and Ehlers, and of course Kyle Connor, who had the big game with a hat trick. Dubois assisted on 4 goals, and Nick Ehlers had a goal and 2 assists. And there was some, I guess, points from the bottom 6. Our friend, what's his name? Axel Johnson Fijalvi, one of the better names in the NHL. He had a goal and an assist today. But yeah, so I guess like Wheeler, you said on the show that you did with Jeremy, how he's sort of like a streaky guy. And sometimes he goes hot, sometimes he goes cold. Hopefully this is not the start, because now it's 2 games with no points for Blake Wheeler. I guess Cole Perfetti's also here. So it's been Wheeler, Perfetti, and Scheifele. And yeah, nothing for these guys. Perfetti is someone I mentioned on my like stream of consciousness yesterday as like someone maybe to add for this Sunday game, then also for next week. But he's really doing nothing. Like he keeps not getting points, so maybe I might take it back. It's kind of like one of these guys you expect he'll do something from his spot in the roster, but at some point you just have to give up on him. Like I remember a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Adam Boqvist on the top power play in Columbus. And I just had that hunch of like, I know like he's in a good spot, but I still pass. Like I know Columbus has a good schedule. Like all this stuff, I was like, I still don't want him. And look at that, he ended up getting healthy scratched. I'm not saying that Perfetti's going to get healthy scratched, but he's not that interesting right now. Ehlers is obviously the most exciting of these outjuries. Finally, also getting a top power play spot, which he used to never be able to get. So what's my question here, Brian? I guess it's just like Wheeler, are we worried about him? Perfetti, is he even worth grabbing at this point? And then Nikolai Ehlers, I don't know. What are we expecting? I was expecting huge things from Nikolai Ehlers, right?
For sure. Yeah. We're coming into the season expecting big things from Nick Ehlers, who last season, or the last few seasons, he's basically paced for on aggregate 75 points. And that's from the second power play unit. So this was the year that Nick Ehlers was going to show up on that top power play unit and add, I don't know, potentially 15 points to that output. We had eyes to Ehlers being able to be an above a point per game player. And I hope that's what he's on track to do now that he's healthy. John in the chat and I have both been waiting a long time. I've hung in a season-long points league, points only. And I've been hanging in, waiting for Ehlers to return. I'm hanging by a thread. I'm in the top 3, but there's some distance between me and number 1 now. And I am really hoping that Ehlers can help pull me back into contention with his return. For Wheeler, Elon, I mean, what I said on short shifts still stands, where he's someone who he's been doing much better than I've expected, even though it's still about the same as he's been doing for the last 3 years. He's just a little older now, which is why we'd expect him to fall off. Some of his advanced stats are falling off too, but the points have not fallen off with them, which is strange. So I don't expect him to be quite as hot as he was going into this injury, but still should be fairly serviceable. And then Cole Perfetti does seem like super hit or miss. Remember, he just turned 21 at the turn of the new year, January 1st, baby, Cole Perfetti. So he's in his first full season in the league, still finding his feet. Consistency can be an issue, and I think that's all we're seeing now. I think he might be good for his stream, and if he gets hot, like there have been moments where it's like, yeah, you need to go out and get Cole Perfetti, but you also don't want to be too attached to somebody like him.
Yeah, I feel like if he's not on the top power play, he's not especially exciting. Also, it really seems like just this line of Dubois, Connor, and Ehlers are really gelling. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois, we had actually Zach Fry in our patron Discord asked us to just like give an appreciation shout out to Pierre-Luc Dubois for the season he's having. Yeah, after these 4 assists today, Dubois is up to 47 points in 40 games on the year. Unbelievable. That's a 96-point pace. This is very exciting for him, I'm sure, because he's going to have his contract over at the end of the year. He's going to be still an RFA, so we'll have to see what Winnipeg is going to do with him. I know he like said that he doesn't want to re-sign with them, but like, what does that even mean? If you're an RFA, you're just going to take a year off. So that'll be a very fun drama, I guess, in the off season. But man, like remember the 2016 draft? Pierre-Luc Dubois, I remember, went 3rd overall, and people were kind of like poo-pooing it a little bit. I mean, kind of like Brady Tkachuk vibes, right? Of like, I don't know, you left Jesse Puljujarvi to take Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't know if that was the right decision. Of course, turns out Columbus made a great pick. Edmonton made a bad pick on Puljujarvi. Then Vancouver made a really bad pick with Olli Juolevi. And then Calgary took Matthew Tkachuk next, which was maybe the gem of the entire draft. Well, I guess I can't say that because Austin Matthews went first. But anyway, fun to look back sometimes at some of these drafts. Also, Alex Nylander went 8th overall. Remember that? A lot of busts in the top 10. Sergachev 9, Tyson Jost 10. So yeah, a lot of hit and miss. Anyways, we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, he's awesome. Right? All of a sudden, this guy is a superstar in the league. I'm really excited to see where he's going to go next year, what team he's going to be on. And yeah, at this point, I'd love to get a piece of any of that top line. Ehlers, Dubois, or of course, Kyle Connor, all like huge superstars.
Yeah, so good luck getting a piece of that top line as they're all huge superstars. I mean, Dubois is on a 94-point pace so far, matching the best 5-on-5 production of his career, which came way back in 2018-19 when he was a sophomore in Columbus. Dubois paced for 61 points that season. And the difference now is that he's doing that at 5-on-5 and a little bit more, but he also is on the top power play unit this season, which he hasn't really been consistent. Well, he has been, but he's never seen this much run on the top unit before. Dubois already has 16 power play points this year through 40 games. He had just 9 power play points in 82 games last season, and he is one shy of breaking his career high of 17 power play points, which he had in 81 games last year. So, I mean, I'm going out on a limb here, but I think Dubois is going to do it. I think he's going to set a new career high for power play points. So. He's shooting a little less at 5-on-5, but more on the power play. So overall, we're happy. Dubois is in the top 20 in power play goals scorers, actually. He's taken a lot of high quality shots there. You know, we saw this potential from Dubois, but we weren't sure he could reach it, given that at 5-on-5, he and Scheifele are each centering like a 1A, 1B line. But this is him showing that, yeah, he can do it by centering like a timeshare of top line with top power play time. Dubois is making the most of his 5-on-5 ice and crushing it with power play opportunities. And this does not appear to be a mirage. That's what we said about Dubois' production last year. This is a guy who I think is playing up to his potential finally. And Elon, if I asked you, I don't know if you know offhand, how old do you think Dubois is?
I mean, I think I could give a pretty good guess, considering I was just talking about how he was drafted in 2016.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I'll say around 24.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that Dubois is just 24 years old this year. Like, this is his age 24 season, and he's already had like a career's worth of ups and downs. But I think this is a player hitting his stride, entering his prime, and I'm believing what I'm seeing from Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah, he's going to make a lot of money for sure. And it's interesting because he was also traded, of course, from Columbus to Winnipeg for Patrik Laine. At the time, it really felt like an even trade. It's, I don't know, it's starting to look to me like Winnipeg won that trade. I guess in the end, like neither was going to like stick with their team. So like both teams were handcuffed. But Laine is actually on a bit of a cold streak right now. I'm not saying that I'm going to decide who wins the trade based on this current streak, but Laine, just for the record, it is pointless in his last 5 games. We had a question from Adam H asking us if Laine is becoming a snoozer, at least in like your shallower leagues. So maybe it's a good time to just jump over to Columbus right now and talk about Patrik Laine, who I actually traded earlier in the season a couple, and I'm going to take the wins where I can because I'm not having the best season. I would want to mention to the listeners, I have 2 other leagues and I'm like crushing those leagues. So like I don't want you to think I'm like a total loser this year. Yeah, a couple isn't going so well, but I did trade Patrik Laine for Jeff Skinner, and my thought was maybe, well, first of all, he was injured, but I thought when he comes back, so with Zach Werenski injured, is he going to be able to really keep up such a great pace? And I'm feeling he had 9 shots in his last game versus Washington. So, actually, that's today's game. So he's definitely not he's not nothing. I think the answer is probably that he's not a snoozer, but he definitely is he's not like maybe good enough to produce on a team that doesn't give him like really awesome players to play with, right? Like I don't think he's like one of these superstars like a McDavid who can just carry. I think that was one of the issues people had with Laine is he needs like a good player to be feeding him the puck. He's not like someone who could just like do it on his own. And I think we're kind of seeing it lately in Columbus because they're a shallower team and he really isn't producing. And I'm curious to know if you think a bounce back is like for sure going to happen, or is it going to be a bit of a struggle with Laine for the rest of the season?
Well, we thought Gaudreau would be a really good player for Laine to play with, right?
Sure. And they've been split up recently.
Yeah. And like we thought there was Laine, Gaudreau, Jenner, and that was going to be good or good enough for everybody to succeed there. And Laine so far, just a 55-point pace, even though he's taken 3.5 shots per game. And honestly, his 5-on-5 play looks pretty decent to me. He's got a bit of a low on ice shooting percentage. So overall, though, what he's doing at 5-on-5 doesn't seem it's not his most successful season at 5-on-5 by a long shot, but he also hasn't like fallen off a cliff or anything either.
Yeah. You're saying really, like all these words that are like very like, it's been decent. And he's like, okay, it's like we're comparing him to Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's like a superstar now.
Yeah, but the reason that what we're seeing, remember Pierre-Luc Dubois, I talked about how he's found his game on the power play. He's gotten top power play and he's crushing everything with it. Patrik Laine has just 4 power play points through 24 games this season, which puts him on pace for just 16 power play points over the course of a full year, which is not good. That's not what you want from like your top power play trigger man, like someone who's supposed to be a lights out scorer from that position. So that's concerning. And it's actually been a little while since Laine has had big power play success. It's been a little while since Laine has had, a huge measure of success since those early seasons anyway. But even last year, Laine's power play production was not, it was better than it has been so far this year. So I think with some power play production back, he doesn't look as bad as he has so far this year, but also Columbus is just, Columbus is a rough place to be. And we thought maybe he'd be insulated on a top line if he got to play with Gaudreau and Jenner. And that just hasn't happened.
Yeah, well, obviously Jeter getting injured didn't help. Like a lot, and Werenski getting injured, I think, is a big deal, right? He's a big part of that power play.
Huge deal.
Now, what is it? Marcus Bjork has been quarterbacking it when Adam Boqvist is healthy scratched. Like it's not a good situation.
Bjork and Boqvist, I think, have both been healthy scratched over the last week or two.
Sure.
They're like one night quarterbacking the top power play, next night in the press box.
And just to make this the episode where we bring up random players who hit, there's a guy named Tim Burney on Columbus who had 6 hits today. I added him in my Dynasty League.
How do you spell Burney?
Berni.
Oh.
Yeah. By the way, this game, I want to make it more clear here. So Washington, it's over now. They won 1-0 against Columbus, but I could see a line shakeup on Washington because it looks like they were totally outplayed. Like actually, Darcy Kemper made 37 saves for the shutout. Columbus actually looks like they almost doubled the number of shots. Washington only put 19 shots on Elvis Merzlikins, and Merzlikins let one of them go by him, and he had to take the loss there. So yeah, maybe it wasn't a great game for the Capitals, which kind of makes sense. You know, you have all these players coming back. You have to find your chemistry and whatever. Anyways, okay. So that I should mention Kirill Marchenko had a hat trick in Columbus's last game, but then nothing today. So I don't know. Since I'll just finish off the Columbus talk now, is he someone now that all of a sudden we're like super stoked about? Like I know he has a high pedigree, but he only played 10 minutes today. So I'm gonna give my answer and say like it's awesome that he got that hat trick. But if he's not playing with Laine or Gaudreau and he's not on the top power play, then I think you aren't especially interested in Marchenko, even if he had that big game.
No, I'm with you, Elon, on Marchenko. He's just, like 3 goals is amazing from Marchenko. And I also love that we named a bunch of Columbus guys not too long ago for a good schedule early in the week. And Marchenko wasn't one of them. And then bam, we're talking Kent Johnson, Milt Bemstrom. Marchenko was not on our list. And then he goes and puts up that hat trick. But Marchenko was clearly feeling it that night. That's just the 3rd time in 15 games that Marchenko has even taken 3 shots. let alone scored 3 times. So a big night for Marchenko, who is generally not a big shooter, and maybe a nice confidence building moment for him, but not a reason for me to run out and go grab him.
Yeah. And one more, I guess, correction or update here. Adam is reminding me in the chat that with the whole thing I was saying about Pierre-Luc Dubois and how he asked for a trade, Adam is saying that he thinks PLD was implying that he'll sign his qualifying offer and then be a UFA the following season. So maybe we'll get one more year of PLD with Winnipeg, unless that just forces Winnipeg's hand to trade him. You'd think they'd be able to get a really good return for him. What did Chicago get? Maybe it's similar to Chicago trading away Alex DeBrincat, right? I feel like those are similar caliber guys, but I feel like there's even a premium on a center. So you would think maybe there should be a better return from
I would expect. Yeah. Well, I think Chicago might have been able to do better in that DeBrincat deal anyway. It's hard to say, but I also, Elon, I feel like Pierre-Luc Dubois, like you said, as a centerman who can center a top line and play on the top power play, might fetch a pretty handsome. I'm curious to see where this goes. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a soap opera situation in Winnipeg between Scheifele and Dubois, and I think even Nate Schmidt was in on this at some point, also saying he's unhappy. I might be wrong about that. I apologize if I am, but we'll just have to see how it all shakes out. Going back to your question, who won the trade between Dubois and Laine? Yeah, I would have, if I had to sign a guy for the next 7 years at $8 million, I would definitely sign Dubois over Laine.
Yeah. By the way, Winnipeg, for their credit, they've won 5 games in a row now. I wonder, that's a good way to help with players asking for trades, right? Is for the team to be super successful and make it a fun place to play. They're now 26-31-1 on the season. So maybe if Winnipeg could actually go on a bit of a run here, obviously it's helped that Connor Hellebuck is back to his Vezina form. So if they go on a run, maybe, who knows, maybe some of these guys will change their minds. But anyways, let's move on to another team, another outjury. Okay, let's go to Vegas, where Jack Eichel is back. The lines have already been shifting around a little bit, obviously after a really rough 5-1 loss to LA on Saturday. So the game started with Eichel, Marchessault, and Riley Smith, leaving Michael Amadio on the line with Stone and Stevenson, as we kind of were predicting on the last episode. We're saying if it's going well, why mess with it? Eichel could just go somewhere else. Anyways, then they were getting hammered by the Kings, and Logan Thompson got pulled at one point, and then Eichel looks like and Marchessault they swapped Riley Smith off that line, and then Cotter was on that line. So anyways, who knows? I think it's gonna be a big blender. They'll probably try something new in the next game, and Vegas is a bad schedule next week. They only play Thursday, Saturday, so I guess they have a lot of time now to think about it and try to figure out what's the best combination. I have a suggestion. I'm not a professional, but I feel like probably Eichel, Stone, Stevenson is a pretty good line that you might want to try out. I don't know. I don't know if we've seen it before, but it seems like something that could be successful. So in that case, I think if you're holding on to Michael Amadio, and I know we said last week he's a good guy to grab at this point, especially with the bad schedule next week, can we give people permission to like drop this guy? He had a 7-game point streak playing with Stone and Stevenson. He's now pointless in 2. And I wouldn't, like, no guarantees, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not playing with those guys to start the next game.
Me too. Oh, like we'll wait and see. And we don't know yet. It seems like Bruce Cassidy in Vegas has some kind of inclination to spread his offense out if he can, or maybe this is just a way of just easing Jack Eichel back into the lineup. But like you, Elon, I wouldn't at all be surprised to just see that top line reunited before long, which would make Mike Amadio fantasy irrelevant. You could hang on to him until that happens, or I think they have 2 games next week, so you could just let go and not feel so bad about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you could let him go and then get him back even. Like, I don't think people are going to be rushing to add him with that bad schedule and with him now pointless in 2 games. And the fact that we are talking about Michael Amadio, a guy who was like getting healthy scratched earlier in the season. Jack Eichel, for what it's worth, he had a goal and 2 assists in his like return on January 5th versus Pittsburgh, and then nothing versus LA. And only 2 shots. So but that was a bad game for the whole team, including Logan Thompson, who, by the way, is like not been as amazing lately. Like, he started the year so good, basically made it so Vegas was very happy to just stick with him and Aiden Hill as their tandem and send Brossoit to the minors. And apparently Brossoit is actually doing pretty well in the minors for what it's worth. But Thompson, so 3 goals against on 19 shots versus LA before getting pulled. I was just looking at his game log over his last 15 games. I think it's a pretty decent sample. It's not great, right? Like, not consistent, not someone you can set your watch to. Like, okay, out of those 15 games, he's letting 5 goals in 2 of them, 4 goals in 3 of them, 3 goals in 5 of them. So a third of the games, that right there, that's 2/3 of the games with 3 or more goals against. Then he's had 3 2-goal against games and then 1 goal against and 1 shutout. So, like, I'm not saying he's been terrible the whole time. It adds up to like an average-ish goalie, but he's someone who I think in our minds we were starting to think of as like, this is one of the upper tier goalies in the league here. But yeah, only a third of his games are less than 3 goals against lately. Are we worried that maybe he's hitting like a bit of a rookie wall? Like, maybe he's like super talented, but this is a guy who's never played a full season in NHL starter. And there's a reason why Andrei Vasilevsky is so amazing. It's not just like he has good games, but he's able to consistently keep up his like high elite performance, like every game of the year, playing, volume, then year in, year out, which is like a whole other thing. And that's the reason why I always like put him at the top of Schmore Goalies board with you, even though there's other goalies maybe were better in the previous year. You just know Vasilevsky's going to be someone you can rely on. And I'm not saying Logan Thompson can't be something great like that one day. I mean, I don't want to put any pressure on him to say he has to be like Vasilevsky, but I think it is possible that he's good, but also maybe it will be a struggle for the rest of the year just because this is new and it probably takes time to learn to like be consistent through a whole season as an NHL goalie.
Yeah, especially if you are 25 years old and you've never really been considered as a potential long-term NHL starter. So like, that's another thing in the mix here, that Logan Thompson, like undrafted, basically has worked his way up from the East Coast Hockey League, or I think it's actually just called the ECHL. They dropped, like, they just call it the acronym, and the acronym is meaningless. They just kept the letters. Anyway.
Really? Like KFC?
Yeah. Well, I think that's still Kentucky. Is it not Kentucky Fried?
No, I think they just call it KFC now.
Oh. So like officially it doesn't stand for anything?
I think so. Exactly what you just said about the ECHL. I think it's the same.
Wow. It's also true, I think, of a college hockey conference too, the ECAC. Anyway, okay. What were we saying? Logan Thompson, undrafted, no pedigree. So Elon, you're saying maybe he has to learn, like he has to work at the skill of being a starter, which is true. Also, maybe he just isn't, is another thing for us to consider. But he was really good to start the year, right? So we want to keep our minds open. Anywhere we can find a starter potential NHL goalie, like we're gonna try and find one. And Logan Thompson appeared to be that for the first chunk of the season. But as you mentioned, Elon, he's sort of been alternating between decent start and bad start for a few weeks now. And actually, for the last 5 weeks, Logan Thompson has been very bad at 5-on-5. Interestingly enough, his protection hasn't quantitatively changed, but I do wonder, like Zach Whitecloud has been injured. Alex Pietrangelo missed some time. Shea Theodore's been out. Alex Martinez missed a couple games. You wonder what impact that's had on how the D group operates, even if the number, like Thompson's expected save percentage, still seems to have held steady through all of that. But I'm sure there's differences in how the shots come and how things play and how steady and safe and secure you feel in your crease and being able to predict what's going on in front of you. I wonder. So we'll see what happens as the Vegas blue line slowly returns to health. Obviously, I don't love what I see from Thompson lately. He's been really, really bad. So we'll see if things improve when Shea Theodore returns, maybe, or before then. But now there's some red on his record for us to say maybe Logan Thompson won't be the guy. And maybe we keep an eye now on Aiden Hill to see if he can come in and do anything to make some kind of impression, or if Laurent Brassard gets a chance at any point in the near future. I'm not counting on either of those guys being any better than Logan Thompson. So far, they haven't shown themselves to be. I think Logan Thompson is the best bet of that group to turn out to be a starter for the team for the rest of the year. But maybe this is a moment where if you're just looking for games played, those guys get in the net a little more often.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw it out there. Like, I obviously had to bring this up because I'm a journalist and I'm just reporting the news that Logan Thompson hasn't been as good lately. But I'm going to say my prediction is that he'll be just fine. And it's like a buy low opportunity. But of course, with goalies, like, I don't want to like really stick my neck out because who knows? Goalies are random. I have a hunch that Logan Thompson is really good and he'll be fine. But I wanted to pause that maybe he was hitting a rookie wall. But who knows?
Cool hunch. Very journalistically ethical of you.
Thank you. All right. So next, we've still got some outjuries to get to, some injuries, and we've got hot streaks and cold streaks. We've got a lot, Brian, to talk about, which is good. We're settled in here. We're going to be here for a while. But why don't we just take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsors over that Blue Wire has sourced for us. So enjoy these ads, and we'll be back soon for the second half of part one here with more injuries and outjuries. Bye. I don't know why I said bye. Hi, we're back. Okay, let's continue, Brian, on these injuries and outjuries. Let's do an outjury here. Morgan Rielly is back for the Leafs. He's been back for a little while now, but I don't think we talked about it too much. He's played 5 games now for Toronto. Only 3 assists in those 5 games going into today. Toronto is playing against Philly at the end of the first. It's 2-1 Toronto. Let's see. Did Rielly? Nothing so far. And maybe one reason why Rielly isn't producing like maybe he used to is because he has not been on the top power play all the time. Like, the Leafs have started running this 5-forward power play with Mitch Marner as the quarterback, and it seems like it's going pretty well. Like, Rielly still is getting some power play time. Like, he had 50% in the last game, but this is a guy who used to get like 70, 80%, you know, when the Leafs would just roll out that awesome top power play. If he's been bumped lately by Michael Bunting, who's taken that spot as the 5th forward. He's been really great, right? Bunting is now up to 19 points in his last 19 games going into today. Pointless in his last 2 games for what it's worth. But if he's on the top power play as well as on that line with Matthews, I feel like he could be a 70+ point guy. Like, obviously the deployment has to stick, but Bunting's amazing. He's probably not available at this point in any leagues. I can't imagine. But yeah, how worried would you be as a Morgan Rielly manager at this point? If he loses that top power play, that's huge. That's like I feel not kills his fantasy value. He still plays a lot on a team that scores a lot of goals, but that's gotta be like a 10-15 point hit at least.
It's a hit for sure. So I'd be a little worried about Morgan Rielly, although we said that about Charlie McAvoy, and as we'll hear about later, he seems to have gotten off unscathed from his little vacation from the top power play unit. But Morgan Rielly, you got to be at least a little worried when this sort of thing happens. Let's take a look overall at the Toronto power play, though, which is where we want, those of us who have Rielly on our rosters, that's where we want him to be. Toronto has the 8th ranked power play in the league. They're converting on about a quarter of their opportunities. From the moment that the Leafs went 5 forwards, they've actually been slightly more successful than converting on 1 out of every quarter. They've converted on 28% of their power play opportunities. And the Leafs also
a quick question.
Like,
because I guess the big reason why people say to not do the 5 forwards is they're letting in shorthanded goals. Do you have any data there of if they've had more shorthanded goals against? They're getting the benefit of more goals, which kind of makes sense. You have more offensive guys, but I think most teams want to have that defenseman there just to make sure that the other team isn't able to come back and score.
Pause. This is I'm gonna, with the magic of
internet research.
Okay, I have an answer. Yeah, they've given up 1 shorthanded goal since going to 5 forwards, and they've played I don't know. They've played, I had a number here. Oh, hang on. Let me just do that again. They started doing it around mid-December. Okay, got it. Great question, Elon. So the Leafs have given up 1 shorthanded goal against, and it was in a 6-5 loss to St. Louis in a shootout. So it was kind of a big deal to give up that goal. And since they've been at 5 forwards, and that's just been an 8 or 9 game span. So in the 25 games or so when they had a defenseman on their power play unit, they'd given up just one shorthanded goal in all that time. So it's an interesting point. I don't think they're getting crushed because they have 5 forwards on the unit, but I'm sure 1 or 2 more shorthanded goals against would probably tell them to put a D-man there. And it's also not like Morgan Rielly is an elite D back there, but he knows how to play the position better than a forward, you would think. But anyway, that Toronto power play is really clicking with 5 forwards. They have a power play goal in 7 of their last 8 games. So on one hand, I'm thinking, well, if it ain't broke in Toronto, why would they try to fix it? But that unit has also been really strong all season. Like the power play was very much not broke with Morgan Rielly on it, which is reason for me to think, I think he'll get back up there again at some point. The only one rationale I could give for him not is maybe coach wants Rielly to be fresher for 5-on-5 play. Like if I could rest a defenseman during my power play time, I might do that, especially if I feel like I need to rely on him in my top 4. So it's a little worrisome that Morgan Rielly hasn't jumped back up there yet. I'm not giving up hope that he never gets up there again, though, but it is a situation that I will be closely monitoring if I am rostering Morgan Rielly.
Yeah, I think it's concerning. And like what you said, like most teams would just want to have a defenseman there. I think that from what I've been seeing on Twitter, for whatever that's like, I think Mitch Marner is actually like good, like as like he's a good defensive player. So it's not as if, like you said, like Morgan Rielly is not an elite defensive player. So maybe he and Mitch Marner are actually not too far apart. So that'd be another reason to be concerned. Calle Jarnkrok, by the way, we brought him up last week. He's been sticking in that, spot on the second line with Marner and Tavares. And he is like, hasn't been amazing. Like it's not as if you're like loving life because you added Calle Jarnkrok. He had an assist versus Detroit, 2 pointless games before that. But now I see he's scored a goal today versus Philly there at the end of the first, assisted by Marner and Connor Timmins. So I think Jarnkrok's going to continue to be, borderline rosterable, probably someone you want to have if you can get him, especially when Toronto has a good schedule, if he's going to stick in that spot, which it seems like he will. Okay, so let's go to our next injury here. Matt Zuccarello was hurt versus Tampa on Wednesday. I think I saw an update saying he'll be back soon. So maybe there's actually not much to talk about today with Minnesota now that we've had that update. So Matt Boldy took the spot on the top line, and I thought it was very interesting that Sam Steele took the top power play spot. So like Sam Steele, at least in the short term, line 1 and power play 1. Right now, Minnesota is, let's just get an update here. So they're losing 1-0 to St. Louis. And just let me bring up the lines for today. But again, maybe this is like not even that valuable of information since Zuccarello is not a serious thing. But yeah, so still Steele, Boldy, Kaprizov on the top line. They haven't had a power play yet. Okay. Here's an actual question I could ask you about Minnesota, I should say, that I think is actually interesting, regardless of if Zuccarello comes back soon or not. I kind of wrote off Ryan Hartman. I think a lot of us did. He came back from his injury. He didn't get back on the top line. He's not on the top power play. So I think a lot of us said, okay, so I guess he's not, he'll go back to the Ryan Hartman of old from his Chicago days. But he's actually doing really well, even from his line. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists in his last 3 games. Is this someone that's worth rostering in a league like the Cupful or maybe even shallower leagues, even though he's on like line 2 or line 3? I don't even know what you call it, right? You've got Steele, Boldy, and Kaprizov, and then you've got 2 lines that seem kind of even. Like for today, it's Hartman, Gaudreau, and Duhaime, then Eriksson Ek, Foligno, and Ryan Reeves. Okay, so that means someone is definitely missing. So I think Jordan Greenway. I think I did see
Greenway.
That he was hurt.
Yeah, he's hurt. He was rolled out shortly before the game. So Ryan Hartman is playing with Gaudreau and Duhaime, which is not a great line, right? Like you wouldn't think, but Hartman also has 10 shots in his last 3 games. So that's nice. But the problem is that now that Zuccarello's out, Boldy moves up to that top line, which means that Hartman really has no one to play with. I think when Boldy is on that line, maybe Ryan Hartman gets like a Freddie Gaudreau-ish kind of performance like we saw last year when Gaudreau was with Matt Boldy and Kevin Fiala. And that's the best we could hope for, which wasn't so rosterable anyway for Freddie Gaudreau. I'm Ryan Hartman. It's a nice little run. It's great to have another forward who may be worth a stream in Minnesota. They're kind of a frustrating team in that they never, like there's some teams where the stream worthy players are kind of always being picked up and dropped. In Minnesota, it's like either you got them all year or you don't. And we'll see if Ryan Hartman is an option in a nice schedule week for the Wild to be added. By the way, Sam Steele on the top line. Do you know he's up to a goal and 9 assists, 10 points in his last 10 games, only 16 shots. Some power play production from the second unit is boosting that. And of course, Sam Steele is kind of a tough hold in peripherals leagues because he doesn't do much else when he's not scoring. I've said that a few times, but different guys tonight. But it sure looks like Sam Steele is sticking. Like we're talking about Ryan Hartman on another line. Looks like Sam Steele is sticking as Kaprizov's centerman, who we were all desperate to try and figure out who it was going to be this year. So I would be very interested in going and grabbing Sam Steele and seeing just how long he can keep being a reasonably consistent producer. I think there's a chance that he could be rosterable through the rest of the season, even without peripherals, if he can keep getting in on goals scored by Kaprizov and Zuccarello, and occasionally, very occasionally, himself.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I wasn't planning on bringing up Sam Steele just because we've kind of already brought him up for the last few weeks. And I feel like we've come to that conclusion. It's kind of like Kevin Hebert, our awesome couple coordinator, asked in the chat, are you planning on bringing up Phoenix Copley today? And I just kind of like, well, no, I feel like I have nothing new to say about him because I keep saying every week that you should add him. I feel like at this point, hopefully people have gotten the message. I feel like the same about Sam Steele. Like, yeah, he's on the top line. Doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. So yeah, I'm definitely with you that Sam Steele is good. A more like interesting question at this point is a guy who's been in the same spot most of the season when he's not getting healthy scratches, Calen Addison on that top power play, who like we were excited about. He had a couple good games at the start of the year. Then he went totally cold. He was getting dropped everywhere. Then every once in a while he has a good game and people are like, oh, maybe now's the time. Because generally the rule for fantasy hockey is that there's a top power play defenseman on like a good power play with someone like Kirill Kaprizov, you generally want to roster that guy. And now all of a sudden Calen Addison again, 2 straight multi-point games in a row before this game today against St. Louis. So we'll see what he does today. But like, is this a situation where I just don't want to go on the podcast and say everyone go out and get Calen Addison just for then him to do nothing, and people like stop recommending Calen Addison to me, he never works out. But at the same time, I don't want to not say to get Calen Addison because he's good. Like, I mean, he's like going into the year, people thought he was really good, right? He was like a high pedigree guy. He got this like spot, you know, taking Garrett Spurgeon off the top power play. And so I don't know, Brian, what do you think? Is this a fool me once situation with Calen Addison, or is it like, no, just get him now because he's starting to produce?
So I have one ad left for my Cupful team. That's the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, kkupfl.com. That acronym stands for real words. Okay. If you want more info on how to join and be a part of it.
Yes, you have Calen Addison.
Okay. I have Calen Addison available to me with one move left this week, and he'd get into my lineup for a few games next week. I'm desperate for D, and I'm not sure I'm going to add Calen Addison. I love that he has 6 shots in his last 2 games and 5 points in these last 2 games, 3 of them coming on the power play. I guess I'm still skeptical. Like you said, fool me once. This would be like the 3rd or 4th time that Calen Addison is fooled. Like he was a treasure at the start of the season. Anybody who had Calen Addison, who raced to get him out of free agency or picked him up off waivers or drafted him late, was feeling so good about themselves. And then, well, was basically at a disadvantage for as long as they held Calen Addison for. Like he had 6 shots in his last 2 games. Like I said, that's his highest consecutive night total all season. In the 3rd and 4th games of the year, Addison had 5 shots and then 1 shot on goal. That's the only other time he's put up 6 shots over 2 games. This is a guy who is very quiet. I don't know, Elon. Like the truth is, like you said, you don't want to say forget him and you don't want to say go at him. I'm in the same place. Like I don't know if anything's changed with Addison. I'm watching to see if he has figured out how to produce as a power play 1 quarterback, but I am not yet sold. I'm going to need to see more to really believe that he is worth running out and getting.
Yeah, I know. Like, I get what you're saying, but like, you know that someone else is going to grab him if you don't.
Yeah, so let me ask you. You play in the Cupful, kkupfl.com.
Oh my God.
Do you think that I should add him?
Well, who else? Like, who are we deciding between? Obviously, you can't answer these questions without some context.
Okay, I'll share. So I have a couple. Like, I have a bunch of like random Nashville forwards. All the guys we talked about on short shifts. We've got Cam York.
But you said that you'll be, oh, that's interesting. Okay, wait, 1 second. Sorry, because if you're telling me forwards or Calen Addison, I can't compare apples to oranges. Are you getting more games out of Addison because you need D?
I would stream in the forward and then drop them first. And I do need defense. So like I could get 2 games early in the week out of a forward, or I could bring in a defenseman that might last on my roster a while. Cam York ticks both boxes, plays twice early and is on defense. Who else am I looking at? On defense, you want to know my defensive options?
Sure, I guess, but I'll stop you right there. Like Cam York is also very interesting, right? Like maybe how about let's dive into Cam York and then answer the question after.
Okay.
Let's table that.
It's a shallow pool, but I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, well, oh, is that like a diss on Cam York? Okay, let me set the
No,
table.
it's not a diss. I just don't have as much to say on him as I do Kalen Addison. Do you want to set the table and I'll tell you what I know?
Sure. Okay. Well, I know that Cam York is a high pedigree guy, drafted 14th overall. Like I guess 3 years ago, now 4 years. Oh man, time is going. 2019 is 4 years ago, everybody. So, well, I guess it was in the summer of 2019, so 3.5 years ago. But yeah, so he was drafted 14th overall. He's taken a while to get into the league. He did play a couple games in the 2020-21 season. Then he played 30 games last season, but didn't get great deployment. And this year, it seems like Tortorella likes, actually, he's playing fewer minutes. Actually, now that I'm looking at the time on ice, he's not even playing that much this year, but he's getting more points in the time he's playing, right? He has 7 points in his last 9 games. Philly's been scoring a decent number of goals. They've won like 3 games in a row going into today. I guess, yeah, we do have this game happening right now between Toronto and Philly. Did I mention who scored the Philly goal? Travis Konechny scored. It looks like unassisted. Travis Konechny is very good, by the way, as a side note. But Cam York is, yeah, on a hot streak, and he's a high pedigree guy. So actually very similar to Kalen Addison, right? A big, more assist heavy. Unfortunately for Cam York, he's not on the top power play, right? Because Tony DeAngelo has been very good there, and he's not getting bumped. So I don't know. I think okay, so yeah, you tell us what you think about Cam York as of now, but obviously I'll be interested to hear your answer and what you think of Cam York. I think I'd lean Kalen Addison. Yeah, I think I just add the top power play guy and hope for the best.
Okay, yeah. So Cam York, you mentioned first round pick of Philly back in 2019, 14th overall. Do you know he's from Anaheim, Elon? He grew up watching the likes of Lubomir Visnovsky, who's getting another mention on the show, Scott Niedermayer, and a 19-year-old Cam Fowler on the Anaheim blue line. I picked a random year to look at the blue line for when Cam York might have been getting interested in following the Ducks. This season so far, Cam York, before his call up, had 13 points in 20 games with Leahy Valley of the AHL, which is a step forward for York. Last season, he had just 12 points in 34 games, where he also had 10 points in 30 games in various stints with the Flyers last year. He doesn't shoot. He has 7 shots in 12 games, no peripherals to speak of, but 8 points over 12 games. And if you slice it different, 7 in his last 9, including a 3-game point streak. And like Kalen Addison, Elon, I don't see why this would or wouldn't continue. Cam York, the Flyers are shooting almost 13% with him on the ice, which is helping him pick up points. So I don't think that's quite going to last. He is on the top pair, though, even though he's not on the top power play. Kalen Addison is not on the top pair, but he is on the top power play. So fewer minutes for Addison, but higher quality minutes for Addison. So I agree. I think I would go Addison over York. It really is just sort of Addison versus I've got Blankenberg, who might be returning as another D option. And then, like I said, all these random Nashville forwards who are.
I don't think you should take a random forward. Like the way I like to play anyways, if you need, when you say you need D, you mean like you have empty spots on your roster, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So yeah, just like fill the spot. And then when you stream other players, you can stream for schedule, but you could be guaranteed that this spot's going to get every game. I don't know. I like to have 4 defensemen, or if I have 3 defensemen, I like it to be because I have all my forwards are on a week where everyone's going to play all their games. I don't know if I'd be streaming random Nashville, even the way you present them, random Nashville forwards. I think I'd rather get the top power play defenseman and hope it does well, but obviously it could go either way. Can I throw another D at you?
He has a shot. Oh, I can't use my last move of the week on him because he's already started playing. Oh, wait, I just added him. Oops. All right.
You definitely can add players on Yahoo that have after played.
The game. Right. You can't drop someone if they're in their active lineup.
Yeah. All right. Well, now you've got him. So hopefully that goes well for you. Out of curiosity, since we're talking about some defensemen, I was going to, when we brought up Cam York later in the show, as we were originally planning to, I was going to compare him to a guy who's 58% rostered in Yahoo leagues. And I'm trying to figure out why. Let's say you had not only Addison and York in your free agency, but let's say you also had Evan Bouchard out there. Would you have even considered him? Because he's still rostered in 58% of Yahoo leagues. I don't get it. He's pointless in 7. He's pacing for 28 points on the year. Why aren't people dropping Evan Bouchard? I don't get it. I'd also take York or Kalen Addison over Evan Bouchard.
Evan Bouchard is not rosterable, right? He is a huge snoozer. He was someone who you'd grab early and pick up because, maybe he could do enough peripheral contributing while you wait for him to take over the top power play role from Tyson Barrie. But Evan Bouchard is shooting less than he was last year, 2 shots per game versus 2.5. And that might be because he isn't seeing as much top power play time. Technically he is seeing more on average than he was last year, but I don't Yeah, I don't think it's like his high quality time, like when he was really in there for Tyson Barrie, which he hasn't been all season long. So yeah, only a couple shots a game. Like he'll get you a hit a game, a block most games. That's it. There's no reason to be having, especially if your league counts plus minus. And Bouchard is a minus 14, which is definitely probably not working in his favor for being able to mount any kind of challenge to Tyson Barrie as the top power play quarterback.
Yeah, I think that people need to get over Evan Bouchard, at least for now. It's not happening. I remember there were theories earlier in the year that like Edmonton was like actively suppressing Bouchard so that they won't have to pay him a lot for next year because he's going to be a free agent. I don't know. They're doing a good job if that's what they're trying to do. He definitely has not earned himself a big contract for next year. Though I'd imagine he had some opportunities, at least even strike. Like you say, Brian, he's minus 14, so that doesn't help. Well, I'm at a crossroads, Brian, because normally how we do Keeping Karlsson episodes is sort of once we talk about a player, we talk about some other players on that team, but we've kind of gone off the rails a bit after talking about Calen Addison. So I've got some more Philly guys to go along with the Cam York talk. I also have some more Edmonton guys to go along with the Evan Bouchard talk, or we could just get back to where we were and get to Philly and Edmonton later. Where do you want to go? Do you want to stick with the injuries and outjuries, or just want me to keep with what we're doing here?
You're the host.
You don't care. Okay, let's go back to
it's the above my pay grade.
Let's go back to the injuries and outjuries. We'll get back to Philly and Edmonton later on in part 2. Okay, but more outjuries. We were talking about how Zuccarello's injured. We have a couple big injuries in St. Louis, who's the team that's currently playing Minnesota. Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko both out long term. I know this has already been discussed on Short Shifts episodes, but I wanted to get it in here. So that's led to St. Louis really just loading up their top line with their 3 best guys, Thomas, Buchnevich, and Kyrou, and they're all feasting. They're all like really having amazing stretches. I won't go into the specific numbers, but it's like, over a point per game over a decent stretch. Also, those 3, Thomas Buchnevich and Kyrou, have been on the top power play with Braden Shen and Justin Falk. And this is not like the general situation in St. Louis where they have 2 even power plays. With these injuries, all these guys are seeing like 80+% of the power play time, at least in these last 3 games. So I'd imagine, so first of all, not that this is so fantasy relevant because none of these guys are probably available, but if any of them are, this is like great news. Like normally it's not nice to say it's great that like there's injuries on a team, but I think like Thomas Buchnevich, Kyrou, and then Shen and Falk like have gone up a lot in value while these players are injured because they're going to be getting all the power play time.
Yeah, well, Rob Thomas, his value has already been up. And I think we haven't, like Kyrou, when he started getting going, we gave him some credit. Buchnevich, I'm not sure if we gave him full credit once he started getting going. But Rob Thomas was also someone we were asking at one point in early November, what do you do with this guy? He's not doing the one thing he needs to do, which is put up points. And when he doesn't do that, he's another guy who doesn't do anything else. But Rob Thomas has been hot for a while now, since mid-November, 30 points in his last 28 games. He hasn't gone pointless in consecutive games since early November. So a rough start for Robert Thomas, but he shook it off a while ago already. Probably should have shouted him out for it by now. So yeah, go get, like, if everyone's sleeping on Robert Thomas somehow, Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich, Shen, Falk, all absolutely rosterable.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think they're all going to just keep doing better and better.
Was there another question in there?
I'll throw in another question to you right now. So along with those guys getting more power play time, we also have like top 6 time now that's more available, right? With these injuries. So obviously not maybe great news for Braden Shen, or maybe you'll tell me, because with Thomas Buchnevich and Kyrou all being loaded up on the top line, Braden Shen has been playing with Brandon Saad and Ivan Barbashev. And now those guys are doing pretty well. Saad actually 4 goals and 1 assist in his last 3 games going into today. And St. Louis has a goal today. And I think I saw, Brandon Saad scored the goal. It looks like from the second power play. I just talked about how this first power play is getting all the time. And now today it's been the second power play that scored a goal, assisted by Neighbors and Colton Parayko. But yeah, so Saad is on a hot streak now. This is now 6 points in his last 4 games. And this game isn't even over yet. Barbashev, 1 goal and 2 assists in his last couple of games. Are you interested in these like now secondary St. Louis Blues while Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko are injured and they're maybe getting upgraded deployment?
Brandon Saad can't stop. I'm very frustrated by it personally. Like last year, it was Mikael Granlund, who I've streamed like 1,000 times and finally gave up. I'm not getting caught by you again, Mikael Granlund. And then he goes off. And this year, I've been open to the idea of streaming him in again. And of course, he has not rewarded me at all. But now Brandon Saad has goals in 4 straight and 5 of his last 6. And he's not shooting a whole lot more either. So honestly, there's not a whole lot for me to really like or believe in with Brandon Saad. I think this is just like, I don't know, the universe displaying its anger with something I've done. Saad has now 6 goals on 14 shots. Look, I like Brandon Saad more than maybe anybody else in the St. Louis lineup right now, like more than Jake Neighbors or Barbashev, who doesn't even shoot. And Saad at least takes, a couple or a few shots per night. But I don't see any of this really being able to continue for Brandon Saad. But ride it while you can, I guess. Good for him and anybody who was not so sick of him that I could not bear to have him on their roster.
One of he's in the Adam Larson camp, right? Of players who maybe are most well known for the player they were traded for. Like Saad for Panarin was such a shocking trade at the time. Boy. But good for him to be producing here. By the way, Jordan Binnington was crushed by the Habs yesterday. St. Louis lost to Montreal, which isn't great. And Binnington, that was his second 5 goals against game of the week. He also led in 5 versus Toronto on Tuesday. He was pretty great in a win over New Jersey on Thursday. But yeah, it's been a bumpy road for Jordan Binnington. And maybe it's going to continue to be bumpy with all these guys hurt. Right now, Thomas Greiss is playing for the Sunday game versus Minnesota. We're only halfway through the game. Hasn't led in a goal yet. But yeah, I don't know. Not really a question here, but just we've already been concerned as a Binnington manager. Like I wouldn't drop him. He's still the starter on this team for now. But yeah, it's probably not good. It's good for those top liners maybe to have these injuries because they get increased opportunity. But I don't think it's going to be good for Jordan Binnington that St. Louis just lost 2 of their key players.
No, it's not going to be good for Jordan Binnington, but he's already had a bumpy road, right? Like it's been a crazy year for Jordan Binnington in terms of performance. He hasn't consistently been good or been forever bad through the season. There's been a ton of ups and downs. Things had been better lately for Binnington and the team. He was on a run where he had just 1 regulation loss in 9 appearances. 6 of those were wins too. So that was really good for Binnington. But obviously the team has some adversity to punch through. And I expect Binnington to continue just being sort of an up and down goalie. I'm going to hold out hope as somebody who has him on a couple rosters. I'm going to hold out hope that Binnington rises to the occasion. Now that there's a big challenge ahead of him, they have like 1 line of offense and 1.5 lines of defense or whatever. And Binnington is going to step up and be a key player in that equation. But I'm going to hold out hope, but I'm not holding my breath that is actually what's going to be what happens.
Yeah. And for the future, the Blues just signed their guy from the minors, Joel Hofer. Or maybe it's I think at one point someone told me it was Yoel. Anyways, we'll learn one time. We'll learn for next year. It's probably just Joel Hofer, and I'm being an idiot right now. Anyways, they just signed him to, I think, a 2-year contract. That's like a one-way contract, which doesn't mean they can send him down to the minors, but they're gonna have to pay him like the whatever it is, $760,000, as opposed to some players are on these contracts where they get less money. To me, that's an indication that they'd prefer to just have him in the big leagues, because why take a cap hit like that? So who knows? Thomas Greiss is, he's not going to be still with St. Louis at the end of the year. Like he'll just be a UFA. So next year I'd be worried about Binnington, because I don't think Greiss is going to steal a ton of starts, but I could see this Hofer guy doing so. He's apparently having a good year in the minors. So just something for those dynasty people. But if you've got Binnington in your long-term league, now might be a good time to trade him, or maybe not now after he's led like 5 goals twice this week. Maybe next time he has a good game. Brian, okay, let's do another injury here. Jake DeBrusk, you discussed this on Short Just with Jeremy, covered it really well. You mentioned how Taylor Hall is now on the top power play, and that makes him maybe more interesting. But he still only has 1 assist over his last 8 games. Yeah, it's nice that he's there, but now he actually has to do things. You said last week that you're pretty much over Taylor Hall, and I was like, well, I don't know, I might still be. And you were like, I don't know, whatever. And I would ask you people to compare to Taylor Hall, and you'd be like, I'll take the other guy. Anyways, now that Hall's on the top power play, are you still at I guess you're a little more interested in, but in general, is he still someone you'd pass on in free agency in the couple, or now are you if he was there, you'd feel compelled to add him?
I wouldn't run out and add Taylor Hall if he's already in free agency and he's still been there after a game on the top power play. Yeah, I'm not oh yeah, I'm so glad he's still out there. I'm going to go. I'd be happy to try Taylor Hall out over a bunch of other guys, other streamer type players, like the ones you asked me about last week. And basically any streamer level player we've talked about this week, or even just above, I would prefer Taylor Hall, just looking at who we've talked about tonight, to Connor Sherry, to Cole Perfetti, to Mike Amadio.
Well, that's interesting to say Connor Sherry, right? I know you were skipping over guys. Yeah. Connor Sherry is on a really great run, and he's on the top line.
I'm just assuming that's also assuming Sherry doesn't stick on the top line. And if I had to pick a guy who's on the top power play versus the top line, well, actually, we've had this conversation about Stefan Nason this year, and the answer has generally been not Stefan Nason, but Taylor Hall should be better. Anyway, I'd be happy to try him over most any other streamer level player, or give him an extra couple games on my roster to see what he can do from the top power play. But overall, I am still very much in the same camp that I was the last time we talked about Taylor Hall, which is meh. I'm kind of over him. Third line, even top power play doesn't 100% sell me on Taylor Hall, which is a huge fall from grace still.
Yeah. And when we say third line, that's pretty, because he's not on the third line now, right? So with DeBrusk injured, he's on the second line. He's playing with Krejci and Zacha, but it is like a pretty bummer of a line because now with Pasternak not on that line, it's not a third line, but it's not an exciting second line anymore, at least.
Okay. Sorry, off mic. I thought you said at some point that he was playing with Frederick and Coyle.
I didn't mention that.
And I just missed it. Oh, okay.
I think someone said in our Discord that he was good with them.
Oh, okay. So I just missed that. Yeah. Okay.
Would you want to respond to that at all? Or just
sure, I'll just say, yeah. Yeah, oh, of course. Point taken, second line with Krejci and Zacha, which I talked about why that might not even be a great place to produce from on the short shifts episode. We'll see. He took a turn with Krejci and Pasternak last game, but I'm not sure why. So maybe there's still a chance that he could play with Pasternak at 5-on-5 and on the power play. That would make him even more interesting to me, which is easy to do because I'm just not that interested in Taylor Hall on the whole right now, unfortunately.
Right. And then like another guy, we had a question actually from Sam asking, would you hold Krejci through next week? So Boston has a bad schedule next week. They're only Thursday, Saturday. And David Krejci's been great all year, right? He has 28 points in 34 games. It's a 68-point pace. But the majority of that has been playing with David Pasternak. If he's on this line with Hull and Zacha, that obviously is not good. And DeBrusk is going to be out at least a month. Maybe now's the time where you drop David Krejci and then, have him on your watch list and get him back when DeBrusk comes back or when like the lines shift around again. I don't know. What's your take right now? Like going into a bad schedule week, is Krejci like been so good that you have to hold? Like he has 2 assists in his last 6 games, like lately, and like hardly any shots. So he hasn't been amazing lately, but before that, he was like great all season long. So it's a tough call because again, he was great all season long, but that was on a line that he's not currently on right now.
Yeah, exactly. So coming into a bad week, I don't know if you want to outright drop him. Maybe, of course, see if you can shop or trade him first. There's a couple things that have been working out for David Krejci so far, though, that shouldn't be working out. He's got 10 power play points this season in 34 games. That is top power play production when he spent almost the entire season. He's been on the top unit for a bit here and there through the year, but that is way too high for somebody who is likely to spend the rest of the season on the second power play unit. So that's one thing. And then David Krejci also has scored 7 5-on-5 goals on just, I have it here, 32 5-on-5 shots, which means he's shooting 22%, which is twice as much as his usual like best case shooting scenario. So take a few points off for too many goals, take a few points off for too many power play points, and you're looking at a player who is not likely to be as impressive as his point pace the rest of the way.
Yeah, so I think we can tell Sam that, yeah, if you have someone you're excited about adding, I think you're okay to drop Krejci for now, but hopefully you could get him back at some point when he gets back, when everything gets back to normal, I would think. Like, I don't think he's going to stay in your free agency all year. We should probably mention, since we're talking about that power play, Charlie McAvoy's been back on the top power play for Boston, and he's had 2 straight 2-assist games with a power play assist in each. Last week we were talking about how Hampus Lindholm had gotten, some tries on that top power play and made us a little worried about McAvoy. I hope that our advice, but I think you were saying that maybe like you can trade McAvoy if you can get someone really good for him. That's maybe a little bit safer. Like, yeah, obviously, I hope no one like traded him for someone that was not worth it, and they're mad at us.
The advice on the show was to make a lateral or like extremely minor downgrade just to avoid the risk that the situation carried.
So I feel okay with that.
Yeah,
but now I will rescind that. Just hold on to Charlie.
Yeah, no, I'd hold on until he gets bumped off again. Who knows?
And then speaking now, this is another like fool me situation. Like, I don't want to give bad advice here, but I should mention, as a journalist, Hampus Lindholm is pointless in 4 games. He's not on the top power play. Do we dare risk calling him a snoozer and recommend that people could probably move on? Because the last time we did that, literally like that day, he ended up going on the top power play, going on a crazy run. But like, I still kind of maintain that I'm not that interested in Hampus Lindholm. Like, he's good as like a really good depth defenseman on your team. If like a lot of D are rostered in your league, like he's in a good spot. He plays big minutes. I'm not saying he's nothing, but in your like shallower leagues, I'm not that interested in a second power play defenseman on Boston that's not producing lately.
Me neither. And I'll risk saying it again and being burned by it again. And you're welcome to anyone who's still rostering him. We'll see if it works out for you again. That Elon and I have both said, forget Hampus Lindholm. He's not on the top unit, not rosterable. Without power play production, Lindholm, I think there's a chance he can be about a 0.5 point per game producer, couple shots, couple blocks, a hit. Most nights that has some value, of course. But if we are holding out hope that he's due another turn on the top unit, I wouldn't. I just, we don't have any more insight that, like, I wish we had a little more insight than we do, but there's no reason to think he's going to step up and replace McAvoy there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take Lindholm over like Cam York and Addison, and definitely over Evan Bouchard. But I wouldn't. But yeah. So tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson or ask in the Discord if you're trying to decide whether to drop Lindholm. It really depends like who you could get instead of him. Brian, so we've still got some more injuries and outjuries to get to. It's a dangerous league, I guess. Then some hot streaks and cold streaks. So we're gonna be back with all of that in the second half of this mega episode. I've been having a blast. I hope you have as well. Thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson wherever you get your podcasts. If you watch us live on YouTube, I guess then you're a patron because that's a perk just for patrons. But if you watch us after the fact on YouTube, we definitely ask for you to also subscribe to the podcast because that's how our friends over at Blue Wire give us credit for whether people are listening to the show. And yeah, hopefully we make it worth your while with a lot of great stuff in our feed all week long with 2 short shifts episodes, the new matchup maximizer show that we dropped the maiden voyage of yesterday, and part 2 of this mega episode coming up in just a bit, where we're going to cover injuries to Tristan Jarry and Matt Barzal, and now Rope Hintz just today. We're going to talk about Pacioretty's outjury, Evan Rodriguez, and then some hot streaks. Like I said, Mason McTavish. Obviously, we've got to talk about him some more. So we're going to get to all that in part 2. Thanks for listening, and we will see you soon. Okay, I'm just going to go fill my water bottle because I'm parched and it's empty. So I'll be back in like 1 minute to do part 2. But Brian, if you want to entertain
talk amongst
the masses,
yourselves. Yeah. Whenever you say that, it's just like setting me up. And when I ask for questions, it's like late. It's like there's a delay. What's going on? Okay, I'm going to look at the scoreboard. But if anyone has a question in the chat, I'll keep an eye there. So we've got the Leafs. Oh, there was a funny John Tortorella was like, I love what Konechny and he loves Noah Cates and what Cates is doing with Farabee and Konechny, and that he wants Cates out against the other team's top line. So I went to see how that line performed against their opponent, and they had 0 shot attempts and 7 shot attempts against, which I guess means you're just like down 7 shot attempts. And if that's the best any line could do, then way to go. Like then that's great. Yeah. I guess that was enough for John Tortorella to.
What was the question?
It was just my comment. John Tortorella said he really liked the Cates, Farabee, Konechny line out against other teams' top lines. Mm-hmm. And then I went to see like how they actually did against the team's top line in the previous game, and they didn't have a single shot attempt together.
Well, but did they stop the other?
Well, they had 7 against, and so I just don't know if that's more than what would be expected from other combinations.
What was the team that they were playing?
It was Arizona.
Okay, I feel like it's not that exciting. Maybe if you were telling me it was like against Boston and they kept Bergeron, Marchand, and Pastrnak to only 7, maybe that's good. I don't know about Arizona's top line.
Yeah, I think it's generally bad if you lose the shot attempt share by 7.
Yeah, like obviously, it does depend on competition, but that definitely does sound bad. And it's probably anyway. Okay, let's do the show. Thanks for covering for me, Brian.
You know who's having
a nice full water bottle here.
An embarrassing night for Calgary.
Oh, did they pull Markstrom already?
They're losing 3-2, and Markstrom was pulled, it looks like, after the first period after giving up 3 goals on 11 shots.
To new all-star Alex Stalock, who I talked about before. Yeah,
and they're dropping and they're playing a Chicago team without Patrick Kane. We'll get to them. All right, let's start the show. Let's do this. Oh yeah, I have to do my like stupid voice. Okay. Sometimes I do a bit and then I'm like, I kind of want to stop doing it. You don't have to do it. People like it. You can do it randomly. Okay, so what should I do? Do I yell yes? Do I just start the show? What do? I don't even know. Who am I if I'm not my bits? I don't know. Put that on a shirt. I'll just do the bit.
Yes, welcome everybody to part 2 of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, recorded on Sunday, January 8th, 2023. It is a lovely evening here in Toronto, but Brian and I are inside. He's in Ottawa, actually, recording this show where we've covered a number of injuries, outjuries, hot streaks, cold streaks from around the league in part 1. Definitely please go back and check that out. But in the meantime, we've got a lot still to get to, Brian. So no more dilly-dallying as you're like giving me the motion to like pick up the pace here. That's how like a lot of people on podcasts just talk. Like that's just the normal speed that people, talk on podcasts. That's why people have to listen to like 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. I hope that we could be the podcast where people don't increase the speed for. That's my goal here.
There's an ad that runs regularly on our show that's like dynamically inserted that is definitely made to sound like a podcast. It drives me crazy. Like I just feel so played or manipulated by it.
What is it? Can you tell me?
I don't want to name the.
You don't want to name the thing, but I'm very curious. Okay, tell me off the air.
Okay.
Then that really is a tease now for the listeners.
It's kind of, no, well, it starts with like this friendly like female voice going, do you ever think about how?
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Do you think that your place could be a blank B&B?
Yeah. It's definitely built to be like a ripoff of like a classic Serial episode.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I mean, all of us, let's be real here. We all have headphones that can easily fast forward ads. So,
we don't all.
Well, most of us do. I, of course, listen to any ad that's being presented to me from a Blue Wire podcast. But for other networks, I generally skip the ads pretty easily. But okay, Brian, we got a lot of fantasy hockey stuff to get to. We're still on injuries here. Let's go to Pittsburgh, okay? Tristan Jarry's hurt. You talked about it with Jeremy. Still not traveling with the team, so we don't have like that much more information. In the meantime, like Casey DeSmith has been really bad lately. He had no wins and no quality starts in his previous 4 games. Going into today, but Pittsburgh is playing today against Arizona, and for what it's worth, they're like almost on the second period, and it looks like DeSmith has stopped 16 of 17, so he's holding his own against the Coyotes. It's 2-1 now for Pittsburgh. I don't know, like I kind of want to just pass on Casey DeSmith. I've kind of like changed the way I play fantasy a little bit with these injuries to a goalie where it's not even like, we don't even know the extent of it. And it's not like the backup is like so amazing. I kind of almost wonder if like Tokarski or whoever gets some games, maybe DeSmith doesn't even. Like,
I don't.
Because it's not like DeSmith is like a volume guy that now all of a sudden Pittsburgh's like, oh, we're going to have to ride DeSmith. Like that, there's a reason why he's not a starting goalie. So I don't know. I kind of just want to pass him, but maybe you're going to tell me that that's dumb.
This seems like really contrary to your feelings about Logan Thompson earlier in the show.
Well, no, Logan Thompson is a well, okay. I just think Logan Thompson is currently the starter.
Okay, but when he wasn't, I think you were ready to ride and see what happens, right? Like, he's starting for Vegas. That's a good space to be.
But I guess I had some confidence that Logan Thompson could be a starter.
And if I recall, you also felt the same about Spencer Martin when he was going to step in for Thatcher Demko.
Yes, but Spencer Martin, I thought had the potential. Like he'd been good before, and he was an unknown. Like these, like Logan Thompson, Spencer Martin, these are rookies. They're unknown entities. Who knows what they can be? They could be. Do you know Billy Husso from last year?
Do you know what Casey DeSmith's career average save percentage is?
I mean, you're gonna. What is it? 950? I don't know. I'm excited to see what number you're gonna drop on me here.
No, it's 914. And okay, 55% quality start percentage.
All right, so you're saying that everyone should go and rush to grab Casey.
I'm not saying go rush Casey DeSmith because, well, as Jeremy's mentioned, and I echoed, and I'm now echoing again from the original short shifts that he did with Lewis on last Tuesday, Pittsburgh has a back-to-back this upcoming week. So DeSmith might only get you 2 games, so you got to decide if that's worth it or not. And we also don't know Tristan Jarry's status. Like if you're in a league where goalies are golden and it's always a race or a desperation play to find the next goalie, I would go get him. I wouldn't wait. But if you have some room to wait or decide, yeah, I kind of want to hear, like, and moves are valuable. I want to hear what Jarry's status is first. The fact that they haven't announced, I don't know whether that bodes well or not. Like to me, I'm actually feeling like it's not going to end up being a big deal. This is a gut feel though, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't personally run to DeSmith. And yeah, he has been inconsistent, as you'd expect from somebody who has limited NHL experience. 110 NHL games played over the course of a 5-year career. DeSmith is 31 years old now. He has looked good at times, and I think there have been times in the past, Elon, where he was your Spencer Martin or Logan Thompson, thinking, oh, let's see how far Casey DeSmith can go. Clearly he's betrayed that faith or trust that you had in him at one point, though. And that's why you are where you are with him. I would not be completely disinterested in Casey DeSmith. So I'm not going to take a total pass on him. I would be interested, especially if Jari is out for any length of time.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. You're probably right, but I didn't grab him in any of my leagues, and so I'll see how much I regret it in a couple weeks. In the meantime, Pittsburgh hasn't been scoring a lot of goals lately, right? Only 5 goals in their last 3 games going into today. Like I said, they do have 2 right now against Vejmelka and the Coyotes. We'll talk about Vejmelka in a little bit. He's been struggling a little bit lately, which is unfortunate. I thought he was really awesome. But yeah, all the studs were like not doing anything. Crosby, Gensel, Malkin, like Raquel, only 1 or 2 points in their previous 5 games. Rust was like pointless in 3 going into today. For what it's worth, we've got 2 goals from Gensel today, both assisted by Crosby, and Rust also assisted on one of them. So I was going to ask you, are we worried about these Penguin studs? Maybe we can now be like, take out Gensel and Crosby. I guess obviously we're not worried about them. Not that you would have said you were worried about them either way. We should mention that those 2 have been playing with Rust again, and Raquel's been sent back to the second line to play with Malkin and Zucker. So at least Malkin, I got to ask about, right? Because he hasn't gotten a point yet today. Maybe he still will. But in the meantime, he's on a bit of a cold streak. And yeah, I don't know. Would you be concerned if you had Malkin?
Well, you look at Frozen Tools at the Pittsburgh roster, and every single guy has a snowflake next to their name, which does not mean they're sensitive. It does not mean they're one of a kind. It means that they're cold. It's a helpful little visual for that. No one in Pittsburgh is scoring as a team. But coming into this game against Arizona, they had just 18 goals in their last 8 games, shooting 8%. They were shooting 10% through their first 30 games and averaging 3.5 goals per game versus the 2 that they've been averaging over the last couple weeks. Also, though, the Pens have been shooting a little less lately, 28 shots per game versus 34 shots per game. Their power play has also been suffering an outage, 0 for 15 coming into tonight. In their last few outings, they went 0 for 9 in a single game against New Jersey that I did not watch. So I'm not sure what the deal was. Like if there were a few 3-second power plays involved, I don't know how you go 0 for 9. But of course they're without Letang and Petrie, and that doesn't hurt. I assume overall Pittsburgh's going to be okay. I'm wondering at least just a little if age is beginning to play a factor. Like the Penguins rely on Crosby and Malkin down the middle. They also have Jeff Carter and Chris Letang, who I know hasn't been in the lineup, but they're kind of an older team. Is that beginning to play a bit of a factor in how successful they are? And Jake Gensel, he still hasn't reestablished a regular shooting output. Like tonight, I'm relieved to see he has 2 goals already, but he still only has 2 shots. And Gensel coming into tonight had just 12 shots in his last 8 games. 6 of those 8 games, just a single shot on goal, which is so uncharacteristic. So I want to see him really convince me that he's broken out of that pattern before I really let go of my concern with him. Yeah, and that's I think where I stand on Pittsburgh. I think they're getting some misfortune, but I also am just a little curious about how much of it is misfortune and how much of it is the team legitimately struggling. So we'll wait and see a little longer. There's not a whole lot you can do. I am believing that Malkin, Crosby, Gensel are all going to be fine by the time we're talking about them in a few weeks from now. But I'm not 100% confident that everything is going to be hunky-dory.
Right. Well, okay. Hopefully for them, we just won't talk about them, and that'll mean that they're fine. But I will bring them up if they're still struggling, and then we'll maybe have to update that. So good luck to them. But yeah, like you said, with Letang and Petrie out, that leaves them pretty shallow on defense. Like Ty Smith has been playing on the top power play, and he's a guy who didn't even make the team to start the season. Apparently Jeff Petrie is back with the team skating, so he could be back soon. And Letang, we don't really know because he's now non-roster status because he went to be with his family. But he was injured before that, which is actually very frustrating for people who have him on Yahoo because his day-to-day status got changed to NA. And if your league doesn't have NA, then all of a sudden now you have to take him out of IR. But anyway, whatever. Minor problems compared to what some people go through, including obviously Chris Letang right now, wishing him the best in his family. But Jeff Petrie, let's talk about quickly because he's going to be back with the team. He's having I guess he's not even having that great a year, right? He's on a 35-point pace. I saw you traded him in the cupful for Ville Husso, someone who's been really struggling with Detroit. Want to just talk through your thought process with that trade of swapping Petrie for Ville Husso?
Yeah, well, we talked about Jeff Petrie a little while back on the show where we pointed out that he just hasn't been that strong in any category, and his point totals have been okay, but some of that is because he was stepping up on the top power play unit, which is not necessarily something we could continue to expect. Like he's only on a 35-point pace this season, which is actually as bad as last year, which was a huge disappointment. And he hasn't been on a point pace this low since 2016-17. This is his second year as a Hab, or second full season as a Hab. And the other concerning thing with Jeff Petrie, beyond his low point pace could be tolerable if the peripherals were coming, but his shots per game is also the lowest it's been in a long, long time as well. His blocks and hits, like they're coming in all right. He's actually hitting pretty decently, but that's the least important category in the cupful. So I decided I would send him off for Ville Husso, who, like, Lord knows I don't need another mediocre goalie. I have Jake Allen and Jordan Binnington. It hasn't been a lot of fun to watch those guys struggle to deliver week in, week out. And Ville Husso, I don't need to add a third guy who's just going to disappoint me more often than not. But I thought just trading on the upside of Ville Husso finding his early season form, which we saw, and really he still had it 5-on-5. Just that Red Wings power penalty kill has been so bad. And I think part of it is Husso, and part of it is the actual penalty kill unit. I was looking at what Prashanth Iyer was saying about the unit on his Twitter account, and he was mentioning that they keep losing the opening faceoffs on a penalty kill. So they're just basically handing a team possession every single time. And of course, you're going to get burned when you're facing a fresh power play every, like more often than not, if you can't win that first draw and get a clear early on to gain some momentum in your kill. So I'm hoping that the Red Wings solve their penalty kill problems. The 3 goalie situation in Detroit is definitely a concern for me acquiring Ville Husso, but really Jeff Petrie has been on my IR forever. I don't know how long he was going to stay on my roster either. So I thought this is just a fun kind of lotto ticket swing to take. And if I win and Ville Husso becomes like a really impressive and impactful goalie, I'll be so happy. And if he doesn't, then I don't think I'll have lost much of consequence.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, good luck to you. By the way, quick update on the Bruins talk from before. They are playing today against Anaheim. The game is about to start as we're recording this right now. And there's some new lines that came out on GameDayTweets.com, which is your source for the updated beat writer line combinations. And yeah, so maybe you have to forget everything we said, because they're putting Craig Smith today on the top line with Bergeron and Marchand in the DeBrusk spot, putting Pasternak and Krejci and Zacha back together on the second line, and Taylor Hall back on the third line, which means to me, don't drop David Krejci. Let's see how he does today. I like David Krejci when he's playing with Pasternak, personally. And Taylor Hall was doing better on the third line anyway. So I don't know. Anyways, not to dive back into Bruins.
No, I'm not. I don't want to talk about Taylor Hall anymore.
Okay. So that's Pittsburgh. Let's go to the Islanders. I mean, we don't really have an update. Matt Barzal missed the game on Friday. It was a super late scratch. Super annoying for me, Brian, because as the patrons know, I was trying to figure out someone to drop to bring in Blake Wheeler, and I ended up dropping Jake Wallman, who I had streamed in as a D, which I needed. And then it turned out I didn't need to drop anyone, because I could have just, had Barzal put on the IR. And now Jake Wallman scored a goal on Saturday. So anyway, whatever, frustrations. And also, I can't make an ad right now because I have Letang in my IR, but he's NA. But I would have been able to put Wheeler in instead of dropping Jake Wallman. Anyway, Barzal. So hopefully he's fine. We don't have an. Do you have an update? I don't have an update right now. I haven't seen anything.
I don't have an update.
So who knows? He's been amazing lately. 6 goals and 2 assists in his last 6 games, I think. Or I wrote in 8 games, but that wouldn't even be as amazing. I think he's doing even better than what I have here in my notes. So I'll bring that up. But he's been awesome. The lines look really not interesting with him out. It looks like Josh Bailey or Anthony Beauvillier got a crack on the top power play in the 4-1 loss to Calgary. 8 points in his last 5 games. Yeah, that makes more sense. 6 goals and 2 assists in the last 5 games for Matt Barzal. With him out of the roster, things definitely are not that exciting. I'm not into Bailey or Beauvillier. And actually, another player on the Islanders that I'm curious to know if you're concerned about, Noah Dobson, out of nowhere, is pointless in 5 games. He's having a good season. He was pacing for 56 before this recent stretch. He's now down to only a 48-point pace and falling. What's your take here on Dobson? Do you think he's going to bounce back and now's a great time to go after him? Or should we be concerned? And let's just assume that Matt Barzal is fine. He's back soon.
Yeah, that's a really key assumption, to hope that Barzal is okay, because without Barzal, that Isles offense, I think, really struggles. I know they still have Brock Nelson. Elon, don't worry, I haven't forgotten, but it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt everyone if Matt Barzal is out of the lineup. Noah Dobson's been cold lately. one particular way, which is not a way that we usually say for defensemen. Noah Dobson is on a 10-game goalless drought. I never talk about defenseman goalless droughts, but I am here because Noah Dobson hasn't gone more than 3 games this season without scoring a goal, not since late October. And that all amounts to 7 goals on 75 shots for Dobson this year at 5-on-5, which means he's shooting 10%. That's too high. So some regression is bound to happen there on a guy who's already, like, he's looking cold because he's not scoring goals anymore at a rate he wasn't supposed to be scoring them. But also on the whole, Dobson seems to be struggling a little bit to do what he was doing last season. His power play production has taken a step back. He's pacing for 4 fewer power play points over 82 games than he was in last year's breakout performance. But also on the power play, Dobson has a low points participation rate. So maybe he can make up for some of what he's lost there. All in all, I think this washes out Dobson maybe just being like a 50-point player, which is kind of disappointing, right? Like we were hoping he'd build on what he did last year rather than kind of struggle to hold steady. It's nice that the shots are still coming for Dobson, which is one reason why he still remains like a pretty nice, valuable piece to have on your D. But otherwise, yeah, this doesn't look like a year where Dobson is going to break through and hit the next milestone of 60 points. I think 50 points plus or minus 5 is probably about where I'm landing with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that Dobson is like really great. And like,
I have that same feeling.
Yeah, but I guess you're looking into it, and the points participation rate is a little low though, so maybe he ups that. I don't know. I just feel like this happened last year around this time. I feel like Dobson had been on a good run, and then he went on a cold streak, and I think we might have said to drop him on the podcast, which would have been regrettable because he ended the year like so hot. Like what was it at the end? Like he had 17 points in 24 games and 15 points in his last 23 games. Like 21 points in 24 games in the third quarter. Just looking at the quarterly splits last year, he exploded in the second half of last year. I definitely would I don't know. My gut is like you hold on to Dobson or you try to trade for him and get him for cheap right now. There's definitely reason to believe what Brian is saying, that maybe he'll just be a 50-point guy, but I think he could also just explode like he did last year.
Yeah. The one thing I wouldn't do, I wouldn't dump him. I wouldn't be like, I'm giving up on Noah Dobson. No.
Okay, fair enough. Well, yeah, even a 50-point defenseman is probably valuable in a lot of leagues, but I think he could potentially go higher. There's an injury update from today. So Dallas played a game earlier today before we recorded against Florida. They won 5-1. They won handily, but maybe they lost because Roope Hintz got injured in this game. He only played 5 minutes. And so I don't have an update there, unfortunately, either. Maybe someone has seen something. But in the meantime, I will just mention that Tyler Seguin took Hintz's spot with Pavelski and Robertson on the top line, and Tyler Seguin got onto the top power play to take Hintz's spot there. So if Tyler Seguin's available in your league, and if it turns out that Hintz is going to be out long term, I think regardless of the fact that Seguin is pointless in his last 4 games, I think you go get him, right? Like that's a really amazing spot to be in. Obviously, Tyler Seguin's not chopped liver. He's Tyler Seguin.
Seguin should already be rostered. So if he's not,
I mean, should he? He's only 50-point pace this year. I feel like maybe in a 14-team league. I feel like in a 12-team or less, he has not given much reason. Only 2.3 shots per game. I feel like I think it's reasonable for him not to be rostered in a lot of leagues. But now I'd want him if Hintz is injured.
Yeah, I guess he was pretty consistent through most of the year, and then I'm just looking at his game log over the last month. He's really gone quiet, and I have to admit I didn't fully notice. His ice time has been cut. He's been playing like 14 minutes a night and barely pointing. Okay, so Tyler Seguin might have been dropped in your league, and maybe this is a time to give him a fresh chance on your roster. How about that?
Yeah, though hopefully just Hintz is fine. That would be a real bummer.
Ideally,
of course. Wishing the best to Roope Hintz. Let me see if I have it. Okay, do I have any updates here? I'm just going to game day tweets.com here in the news. I'm just going to do a control F for Hintz. Upper body injury for Roope Hintz, questionable to return. And then I guess he didn't return. That was the latest. So I'm sure we'll get something soon. Let's look next to Carolina. Pacioretty. So you and Jeremy talked about it, but he'd only played like 6 minutes at that time. And he had like a few shots and things were looking good. Since then, things have continued to look very good for Max Pacioretty. He was playing in the last game on a line with Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis, and he potted 2 goals against the Columbus Blue Jackets on only 2 shots, but he did have 6 shots in the previous game, and he is Max Pacioretty, so I assume he's going to generally take more than 2 shots, but that was a great... So now we're looking at 2 goals in 2 games, playing on the top line, playing on the top power play. Like, I don't really know what there is to say about him. he's really good. I guess the question I have is, we had a question on Twitter a while back from a follower named Brian Clark, who asked who he should take between Patches and Ehlers when both were coming out of IR. And I said Ehlers. I think I still stick with that. I'm really excited about what Ehlers can do coming, getting a shot on the top power play. I'm just curious to know, what do you think? Was I wrong, or is it a wash? Pacioretty maybe is more of an injury risk, or is he? I guess they've both been injured. What do you think?
I think we're probably changing our answer with every game that we see. It's like it was first Ehlers, and we saw Pacioretty come back. It's like, oh yeah, Pacioretty, I want him. And then we saw Ehlers go off tonight. It's like, oh wait, I think I want Ehlers. Going back to because I feel like I'm going back and forth a whole bunch. I'm just going to go all the way back to before they had both returned, and especially now that they both appear healthy and well, I am going to go with Nick Ehlers still over Max Pacioretty. I think his ceiling's higher. I think Pacioretty, again, still those two red flags of being on a new team. They both share the red flag of coming back from an injury, but we also know Carolina likes to shake up their lines a lot and roll three when they can. So for those reasons, I am still going to stick with Nick Ehlers, my original answer.
Okay, me too. My original answer as well. You can go back on Twitter and see. Seth Jarvis, by the way, it's a great spot for him, right? To be playing with Aho and Pacioretty. He had an assist versus Columbus in the last game, which broke a 3-game pointless streak. I think now's a good time to buy low on Seth Jarvis if you can. He's been getting 4+ shots in each of his last 4 games and now in a really good spot. So if people are getting frustrated because he went on a little bit of a cold streak, I think this is a really good chance to get him. And Brian, I got to mention him again. How good is Bray Duchesne? Who we had a really funny question on our YouTube video we dropped recently, where I guess someone asked, who is this Bray Duchesne guy you keep talking about? And it was spelled Brey, Bray, like Bray Wyatt from wrestling, and then Duchesne. Obviously, it's
spelled the way it sounds.
Duschey.
It's almost like a cupful situation where I always say KKUPFL. Maybe we need to start saying Brady Shea, SKJEI.
You're right, yeah, which doesn't sound at all like how it's spelled. But yeah, we're talking about Brady space Shea, spelled Skj, I guess. Anyways, we keeping on the show, and I'm just fascinated by him because he keeps producing. He doesn't even need the power play time. He has goals in 2 straight games now. I feel like at one point, Brian, the only reason I'm bringing him up again, because I know I do it a lot, but I feel like every time I do, you generally say, I'm not that interested. Like, he goes hot, he goes cold. If he was available to you right now, it's actually a good time to ask. You just added Calen Addison. If you had also Brady Shea available, would you have taken him over Calen Addison, or would you have still gone Addison?
Okay. Sorry, did you ask about Jarvis, or did you just ask about Shea?
No, I didn't ask about Jarvis. I just spoke about him. And then I just asked you, would you take Shea over Addison?
Okay, good. I would I'm happy to take the chance on Addison. I guess Shea is the higher floor guy, obviously. And you'd be crazy to not add Brady space SKJEI Shea if you have the opportunity to do that right now. Like, he's hot. You go for it. This reminds me of it's now evolved into a Matthias Ekholm kind of moment. Remember, there were a few seasons in a row where Ekholm just went wild for a good stretch of time, and it wasn't really supposed to happen, and his ice time or minutes or opportunity didn't really change, but he was doing things with it, and it was like, yeah, you just have to go get Matthias Ekholm. I feel like that's where we're at with Brady Shea. For what it's worth, before putting up goals in consecutive games, Shea had been pointless in 5 of 6. And now has 2 goals on 8 shots in his last 2 games. So it's like, oh yeah, that is still really good. So I'd get Shea, and I'd rather sell him high though if I already have him, rather than holding on. I'd see if find anybody who's going to believe in him season long. I'm not counting on this to last, but still, that's where I've been from the start. But of course, the longer this goes, the more you just have to ask fewer questions and get on board and ride it until it stops.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about these pointless streaks that he goes on is he still has 5-shot games in there. I love a defenseman who shoots a lot. Sorry, it's just my big weakness in fantasy. I guess I'm always going to grab that guy even if he's pointless. Let's do another outjury now. Evan Rodriguez is back with Colorado, and you maybe think he's not even fantasy relevant. Come on, but hey, he was on the top line in the win over Edmonton with McKinnon and Lehkonen. So they split up McKinnon and Rantanen, which I guess Colorado likes to do every once in a while. And Rodriguez had a big game: 2 assists, 5 shots. Top line, like I said. Are we rushed? Should we be telling people to rush to add Evan Rodriguez? He's a guy who's gone on big hot streaks last year he did it with Pittsburgh. Now, who knows if this is the start of something? I don't know. I'm kind of into him. So I think you should maybe go get him for as long as he's playing with Nathan McKinnon, right?
Yeah, you should. And I'm only seeing positive reviews from those who watch Colorado closely as well on Evan Rodriguez. We like him. We have liked him in a top line role for a couple seasons now. So we like him here too. Go out and see if Evan Rodriguez is available.
Yeah. So that's made the second line, by the way, Rantanen with JT Compher and Alex Newhook. So maybe you're just in Compher, Newhook. I don't know. I think Rantanen will be fine, though. I'm not even going to ask you if we're worried about Rantanen. And the lines might shift up again. Devon Toews is someone, though, we've talked about a few times on the season. I feel like every time I bring him up, you bring down your expectations from him a little, but they still are pretty high. So I want to get an update now because he's pointless in 3, only 3 points in his last 11. I feel like last time we talked about him, you were like, okay, maybe he's not a 70-point guy. Maybe he's closer to a 60-point guy. Are we going down to 50 now? Maybe less than 40? Generally a non-top power play defenseman isn't going to get more than 50. And obviously Devon Toews, broke that trend last year, but maybe it was just a one-off. I don't know.
Yeah, well, first off, I think you're mischaracterizing what I said. I think I said for Devon Toews, 60 points was reasonable, and I wouldn't expect Toews to approach 70 points again unless he gets some really favorable variance working for him. But if I'm wrong, someone go back and show me the receipts and I will own up to it. For Devon Toews, he's still seeing a really rough on-ice shooting percentage. Colorado is having a hard time scoring with Toews on the ice. They're shooting below 6% at 5-on-5 with Toews. And honestly, that may be more or less the full story here. If Colorado was converting on 10% of the shots they took, which is what they did last year with Toews on the ice, he'd have been on the ice for 16 more goals. And per his usual points participation rates, Toews would have participated on about half of those 16 goals, which is 8 more points, which puts him on a 64-point pace for Devon Toews. There you go. That's it. That's it.
He's basically, he has the points.
An on-ice shooting percentage regression. So maybe it is a decent time to still buy low. But there also is an explanation here for why Colorado might not be shooting as well, which is that there have been a lot of injuries to the Avalanche. And there's less depth on the team already this year. And then all those injuries on top of it. That means maybe we should not expect all of those, 16 goals come back. Maybe 8 of them should come back, which is 4 points for Toews, which gives them, some kind of pace in the high 50s. I still don't think Toews is washed. I think he is seeing some unfortunate luck. I think if all goes normally, he should be closer to 60 points than 50 points. And I would be really surprised, Elon, I'm going on the record, if he gets near 70.
I think he's closer to 50 than 60. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
But, a lot of those goals that were scored last year were scored by Gabriel Landeskog, who shot 20%. That probably helped his
and Nazem Kadri and Andrei Burakovsky.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know. I guess, I like defensemen who shoot a lot, and I don't love defensemen who are not on the top power. Well, I guess Brady Shea, I'm talking about as someone to add out of free agency. Devon Toews, I'm talking about someone that I think they're both around 50.
This is like a Casey DeSmith situation again. You're doing not because cognitive backflips here.
Well, no, because there are different tiers of guys, right? I'm not Brady Shea. I'm saying why I think he's rosterable. Devon Toews, I'm saying why I don't think he's elite, but obviously Devon Toews is rosterable. I'm not going that crazy. Cale Makar, by the way, is definitely rosterable and definitely not goals like Devon Toews. Nothing to ask you about, but 8 points in his last 6 games. We're now up to 37 points and 38 on the season. So it was a bit of a slow start for Makar based on his standards. Seems like he's very close to and probably will beat that point per game. It was looking a little rough earlier, but he's right there. I'm not too worried. Brian, we still have a couple more outjuries to get to, and then I still also have some hot streaks and cold streaks. So this will be a fun part 4 of this, part. Have we ever figured out what we're doing here? It's part 1 and part 2, but then each sub part, what are those called? Should we name those, or maybe I don't even need to name them, and maybe I don't even have to put any attention on this any further? You're shaking your head. Yeah. You're you don't care.
I don't need a name.
Part 2, subsection 2 is coming up in a moment.
I mean, 2B is the obvious choice if we did care to name it.
Give us some feedback on what you want to name these sections. We'll get to that final section in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson.
Harpo, Groucho. Who are the others? Right. Who are the other Marx brothers?
Okay.
Why can't I name them?
Let's try to get done because we want it to be done.
Richard, right, Carl.
Okay.
It's not. All right. It's not their names.
I don't care. All right, we are back, Brian. Like I said, a couple more outros I want to get to before we get to the streaks. Not too much to talk about here. So Robbie Fabry back for Detroit. He scored in his second game versus Florida and was also on the top power play for what it's worth. But I don't know. I'm at the point now where I'm not going to be asking you, do people need to rush to grab Robbie Fabry? Maybe a decent streamer, like a lot of people on Detroit at this point. We've been talking about Rasmussen playing on the top line. That's kind of changed in the last game on Saturday versus Toronto. Larkin and Perron were playing with Jonathan Berggren. And then Rasmussen was playing with Kopp and Lucas Raymond. Fabry was actually resting in that game, so it might be all completely different lines in the next game. I can tell you who was on the top power play: Larkin, Perron, Kubalik, Raymond, and Hronek. So Rasmussen was off that line. So, maybe I was excited about Michael Rasmussen in the run he was on, but now if he's potentially getting, shifted away from Larkin, he's less exciting. And I feel like, to me, it's like Rasmussen, Fabry, maybe even Lucas Raymond, or maybe he's a tier above. I feel like a lot of these guys are pretty similar to me at this point. We have Bertuzzi also coming back apparently really soon, as soon as the next game. So I don't know, are all these guys kind of the same, outside of Perron and Larkin at this point on Detroit? Is it basically just, do we want people who are playing with Larkin, and if they're not playing with Larkin, then don't get too excited?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Rasmussen is, I'm done with him. I have him on my roster. And also, there's a lot of teams next week who just play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So if you have a player who's only playing those days at the bottom of your roster, you're not getting a game from them next week. And that's where Rasmussen falls on my roster too. So I'm done with him. He's playing with Lucas Raymond and Andrew Kopp, which theoretically isn't the worst place to be, but it's also not a place that anyone has really produced next to Kopp or Lucas Raymond for most of the year. So yes, get the top line player playing with Dylan Larkin, get someone playing on the top power play if they're available. But aside from that, there's no Detroit Red Wings down the depth chart that I'm particularly interested in.
Okay, fair enough. By the quick update on Boston here, additional reason to not drop David Krejci. He now has a goal and an assist today. Both the goal assisted by Pasternak, and the assist was on a Pasternak goal. So yeah, like we said, forget everything we said before about dropping Krejci now that he's back with Pasternak. Okay, good. And Zacha actually also has 2 assists.
Forget everything we said in part 1B.
Okay, yes, exactly. Well, not everything, but yeah, that part. 1B subsection 7 about the Boston Bruins. Since we're on Detroit, we had a couple of quick things that our patrons wanted us to bring up. Andy S. wanted us to mention that Sherratt is a Paris beast. So I guess, who's the guy I mentioned? Oh, Fehervary. I brought him up on Washington. So Sherratt is the Fehervary of the Red Wings. Ben Sherratt doesn't get points. He only has 1 point in his last 5, but he had 4, then 3, then 1, 7 hits. A lot of hits. He also had 5 blocks. He had 4 hits and 5 blocks in that game against Toronto, and 5 shots. That's surprising. He normally doesn't do that. So that was an exciting Perifs game for him. And then Brandon Pucky Charms on our Discord wanted us to mention Wallman, who we did bring up last week. And yeah, he scored a goal, the only goal for Detroit in that game versus Toronto. He's also pretty solid, Perifs defenseman, but he's shooting more than Sherratt. So I think I like him even better. Maybe he doesn't hit and block as much though. But yeah, 4 shots in his last game, 3 shots in the game before that. Too bad I dropped him. If only I knew about that Barzal injury sooner. Brian, you have Wallman, right?
I have Wallman in one league, and I have Hronek and Cider in another league. So Wallman, by the way, the second unit on the second power play unit ended up with more time than the top unit, which is why he had more time than any other D on Detroit for power play time. And by the way, for anyone who doesn't realize, Filip Hronek is on the top unit now. It's not Cider. Cider's playing with Wallman on the second unit.
They did lose 4-1 to Toronto, so they shifted every game. It'll change again.
Yeah, so we'll see. But Wallman is doing like you said, few shots per game, touches a little bit on hits and blocks too, and is on the top pairing at even strength. So lots of ice time, opportunities to shoot. Second power play unit. I don't know. Maybe I'll call him like a Mikhail Sergachev type, or maybe that's what we could hope. That's what we could hope to see from him. Not power play 1 Mikhail Sergachev, but somebody who can be like a half point per game while putting up a couple shots here and there. That would be nice.
I was going to say that Wallman is looking a little Brady Shea-y lately.
Of course you were.
But you went high. You went all the way to Sergachev, who's rostered. Who's rostered all last year in Cupful, even when he wasn't on the top power play. I don't know if Wallman is at that point where he's a sure roster.
Oh, I don't think so. I'm saying this might be his upside for the year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. I like him though. I think if you need D, you're like me. Why did I drop him? Ugh. But Cupful's hard. Okay, so one more outro here. Andre Palat. I'm kind of tired of talking about Andre Palat personally, but okay, so he's played with Heischer and Bratt in the 4-3 win over the Rangers, but he's pointless in his 2 games. Second power. Can we just call him a snoozer already? Like, yeah, he'll get good roster spots. Maybe he'll pick up an assist here and there because he's playing with good players, but there's no reason for anyone to hold, unless you've been holding onto a Haula or a Tatar all season because you like their roster spot. He's just I think you and Jeremy sort of put him on a level above the Tatar and Haulas. To me, he's the same, or honestly, maybe even less, because he barely shoots. It's I'm not into Andre Palat. I'm just gonna.
Me neither. I'm also. I don't think we need to talk about him unless he forces us to talk about him. I didn't want to talk about him last year either.
Okay, we're done with Palat until he does something, and one good game doesn't count. It's gonna have to be a couple good games in a row. One guy I'm happy to talk about every episode, Jack Hughes. He's insane. He has 8 goals in his last 5 games now. But maybe even more impressive, have you seen the shots on goal numbers from Jack Hughes lately? I've never seen anything like this. In the win over the Rangers, he took 10 shots. In the previous game versus St. Louis, he had 9. Then the previous 4 games, he had 6. He's 6 minimum shots. It's insane. Jack Hughes is so good. I knew I didn't draft him anywhere. He's amazing. He's so good.
You wanted to, but a lot of people were really, really excited about Jack Hughes, and it turned out that they were right to be. Even though there was a slow start, he had just 3 points in his first 6 games, and everyone, oh no, should I have reached for him? Should I have done that thing? But he was even having 7-shot games early on. It's been we're coming up on the 4th week that Jack Hughes has not had a game where he's taken fewer than 4 shots. And that only happened once. He's taken 6 or more shots in 7 of his last 9 outings. And like you said, 19 shots over his last 2 games. I don't know, Elon. I'd be curious to see. I don't have the data in front of me, what the record is for most shots in 2 games. It's got to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, probably in the 80s, people were taking 20 shots in a game or something. But yeah, it hasn't been the type of thing we've seen recently. Ovechkin getting 5 or 6 shots every game was super exciting. But yeah, and it's not as if also he's just bombing from everywhere, and he's shooting at 14.1%, which is an above average shooting percentage, right? So he's taking a ton of shots, and he's scored. Well, yeah, he's up to 26 goals now in 40 games, and this is like you said, the start of the season he wasn't even scoring that much. So this is mostly recently. It's just very rare for him to have a game without a goal. He's kind of like a McDavid, in Tim Hortons, where you're predicting the goal scores to try to win free coffee, which I keep giving them ads because it's actually pretty fun. Jack Hughes is pretty much a sure thing. I think you confidently pick him in box 1 unless McDavid is in that box. I think Jack Hughes now has overtaken Austin Matthews for me as my sure one to take, if not McDavid. Which is high praise to Jack Hughes. Okay. Have we talked much about Dougie Hamilton this season? I feel like we haven't. I just want to throw it out there. He has 10 points in his last 8 games. Now he's pacing for 70 points on the season, which would be a career high for him. Just good for him, because he had a down year last year on a new team. Maybe people were worried, but there was the injury. We had all the reasons, and yeah, I think he's worth that contract that he signed, right? I think New Jersey's probably very happy to have Dougie Hamilton. He's going to be a huge part of this team. I guess they're going to have Luke Hughes come in at some point and challenge, but probably the timing will be perfect, where when Luke Hughes is ready, that'll be when Hamilton, they were expecting him to fall off anyways. So yeah, anyone who drafted him, you probably got him at a discount this year because he was falling a bit in drafts. And yeah, he hasn't been there's some defense like Karlsson and Dahlin that are just insane lately, well above point per game, which makes what Hamilton is doing look pretty pedestrian. But I think Hamilton is great. I don't have a question for you, but any general thoughts on Hamilton you want to share?
No, you said it all. Great season, and it's great to see him recover. We thought he could, and he will never go as far down the draft order as he did this year when there were the red flags from last year. Remember, is Damon Severson going to get to start the year as a power play quarterback? Because he basically ended last year. Didn't happen. So Dougie Hamilton running away with things.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get to our streaks now. Okay. And I want to bring up Mason McTavish. You brought him up in your short episode, but I had to bring him up again because since then he had a 2-goal and 2-assist game versus the Sharks from that new spot on the line with Troy Terry and Adam Henrique. I'm pretty excited about Mason McTavish, super high pedigree guy, right? Drafted 3rd overall. This reminds me a lot, Brian. Tell me if you disagree. It reminds me of what happened with Trevor Zegras last year, right? People were really into him to start the year. He was colder than people expected, and he got dropped in a lot of leagues. And then anyone who was able to kind of grab Zegras maybe even a little earlier than this time. Maybe Zegras started heating up like closer to like December. But anyone who got him ended up having a great hold. And if it was like a keeper league, you ended up keeping him and like thinking that he's going to be a long-term great player. Like McTavish might be that person. He's finally in the top 6. He's been on the top power play for a while. He's producing. He's getting into a groove. So like, yeah, it's Anaheim. They don't score a ton of goals. Like right now they're losing 2-0 to Boston, but it's not even a period over. We'll see if like he gets something past Jeremy Swayman. It looks like Swayman only has 2 saves so far. We're almost on a period. So Anaheim, come on, like do something. McTavish, something like, let's see what you can do. But I'm really into him. I think we're at a point. Yeah, like Anaheim only plays twice next week. So you may think that I'm going to pass, but I think that might be regrettable. I think it might be one of those times where if you don't add him now, someone else will, and then you just won't get him back. Well, maybe I'm being too high on him. I'm not saying pause the pod. I'm not going crazy, but I'm pretty high on him right now if he's available in free agency.
I think you're a little high on Mason McTavish here, saying like Trevor Zegras. I think I see some differences between Zegras and McTavish that makes me feel like Zegras' upside is higher than McTavish's. Honestly, but
I'm saying Zegras from last year, just to be clear. Not that I disagree with you.
Still, no, and I think that the vibes that I'm getting from McTavish are more like another Mason that we might remember from last year, which was Mason Marchment, who was showing that he could have these big explosive nights and that the talent is there and the numbers are there and like there's upside that to be unlocked, but we're just not sure that it is unlocked or that we're going to be able to see it on a consistent basis. So I really like McTavish's new deployment for sure. And I wouldn't be hesitant to add him on my roster to see how far this goes, but I'm expecting if I were just to guess how the season goes, I'd say it will play out a little more like Mason Marchment's season last year than Trevor Zegras's.
I have to remember, I think didn't Mason Marchment actually end up doing like really well by the end? Like he didn't like cool off too much in the second half.
No, he had a good long run there. Like it lasted, I think, about a month. And then at one point he was droppable and then he went on another little run.
Yeah, which probably means that we were wrong and he wasn't droppable. We just thought he was because he went cold, but actually he wasn't the same guy that went on the run before. It just happened to get cold.
Would you have held Mason Marchment when he had 6 points through 17 games over the course of a month?
Well, that's the trick with fantasy. That's why I guess that's why we're here, right? Because it's like
a bottom of your roster guy you likely added at a free agency initially as a stream, and then you struck gold.
I know. Well, I'm not saying like maybe I would have, but it would have been a mistake, right? Because like you say, he heated up again. And sometimes that's why we try on this podcast to give reasons to hold people who are cold or to drop people who are hot.
Well, he heated up again and then he cooled off and then he heated up once more.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to like give us credit, but I don't know why. But anyway, I like Mason McTavish. So what do you want me to tell you? He has obviously a higher pedigree than Mason McTavish. I mean, than Mason Marchment, I should say. But we'll see. He's very young, so he could obviously hit a wall. Probably higher pedigree or probably
probably higher pedigree. Mason Marchment is good.
Well, Mason McTavish was drafted 3rd overall and was the key member of Team Canada last year. Like, I mean, I think there's no where was Mason Marchment drafted?
Oh, he doesn't have a high pedigree. I'm not sure he was.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Probably. Get out of here. Okay. Another guy who didn't have a high pedigree but has been really good is Karel Vejmelka over in Arizona, who came out of nowhere to become their starter last year. And he was really good to start this year. I was really excited about him. A lot of people who got him out of free agency were like loving life. Arizona was winning big games against tough teams. Unfortunately, lately, Vejmelka has gone on a bit of a cold run. He's doing okay today versus Pittsburgh for what it's worth. He's stopped 19 of 21. They're in the third. It's still 2-1 for Pittsburgh. I don't know. Are you at a point where you're like considering dropping Vejmelka? I have Vejmelka and Kakupful. I think I'm just gonna hold until he loses starts. I feel like he might go on a cold run, but I think he's still capable of I think he's still the same goalie as he was before. That's my opinion. So I was like, he's on a cold streak, but I think he could easily just go hot again soon.
Right. So either he's been really overperforming for a year and a half, or he's been what he has been for a year and a half, and now this is the cold stretch. And Vejmelka has been cold. Only 2 quality starts in his last 8 games, and in those last 8 games, Vejmelka's been giving up 4 goals a game on average, .876 save percentage. He hasn't been terrible per his expected numbers, but that's cold comfort to anybody rostering him. And Elon, I'm with you. I think as long as he's still getting starts, I'm not about to let go. It's so hard to find a number 1 workhorse. I'm holding on to Allen and Binnington, right? If I had Vejmelka, I'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. If Binnington and Allen are being held in your league, then don't go and drop Vejmelka. Another potential new starter that's emerging is Alex Stalock over in Chicago. He's been having a really good year so far. In his 13 games, a 921 save percentage. He's currently playing today against Calgary. It's 3-3 right now. Looks like Stalock, though, he's taking a lot, right? Like 30, he's had 35 shots against. He's stopped 32 of them. So it's already like a good start. We'll see how this game finishes off. First of all, good for him. Like he came back from a lot of adversity to get on the team. And maybe you could say like it's not too hard to outplay like Petr Mrazek to take over the starting job. But I think at the very least, it's reasonable for us to kind of like with Korpisalo over in Columbus. It was like surprising at first, but now I think it's clear that Korpisalo is the starter in Columbus. I think it's pretty clear that Stalock is a starter in Chicago, right? Or you could disagree if you do. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's Stalock. So that's what I'm gonna say. Okay. Hang on. I just want to pull up something. Okay. Elon, I don't think this is the moment where Alex Stalock emerges as an NHL starter. This is he's age 35. He's been in the league 11 years. This is his third team. And through Stalock's time with San Jose, we didn't see, well, you are ever the goalie optimist, which is why I was even more surprised by the DeSmith thing earlier. But Stalock has never really proven that he's reliably. He had one good run early in his career. It's actually a very good run, 932 save percentage in his first full season in the league at age 26 with San Jose. But since then, it's been a pretty spotty track record for him. A couple decent stints in Minnesota as well. It's great that he's doing well in Chicago right now, but I just don't know that anyone can do very well for very long in Chicago, long enough to hold on to a job. So I think he'll just be another in a long line of guys that we've mentioned this year and last year and maybe even the year before of goalies in Chicago who come in, look really great, and then can't hold it together either because of their own aptitude or the team in front of them or some mix of both those things.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see. So far, so good this season for Stalock. I think Stalock or Stalock, I don't know. But all I do know is I think he's the starter right now. Like I have set up game day tweets now on the goalies section that when there's not a goalie tweet yet, it has a guess as to who the starter is going to be. And the guess is based on what I've put in the back end, or I like put in who's the starter and who's the backup. And it uses that to generate the guess. And I've switched Stalock to the starter. So on any game that's not a back-to-back, Stalock is going to be my guess for now.
Yeah, as it should be until he isn't.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so another guy that seemingly was taking over as a starter, at least for now, on Vancouver with Thatcher Demko out is Colin Delia, who's been outplaying Spencer Martin. Of course.
He got pulled tonight.
Yeah, today was not good. So Winnipeg beat Vancouver 7-4. Delia got pulled after letting in 4 goals on 13 shots. Spencer Martin was also bad. He let in 11 goals on 14 shots. No, wait, that doesn't make sense. He let in 3 goals on 14 shots. So just like Vancouver clearly just got outplayed by Winnipeg. And these might just be neither like really great goalies. And Delia is like a very small sample size. Like Stalock, we're talking about like 17 games this season or whatever it is. Delia, this was like his 5th game. So yeah, definitely like it was interesting to see that he was like having a few good games, but not enough for me to like be turned around on him yet. Even though, like you say, Brian, I am a goalie optimist. I think probably Delia is not. What do you think? Like, do you think Colin Delia is a good goalie, or do you think he's like not someone to be concerned about, and like he and Martin will just go back and forth, whatever, until finally Demko comes back?
Right. And I think the headline might be actually that Demko is traveling with the team. So he could be coming back relatively soon, which renders this whole conversation moot. I wouldn't want really either Martin or Delia, although Martin has definitely not shown himself to be ready, while Delia has had a really impressive run-up of games up until this moment. So maybe Delia hangs around as the backup after the, like, I don't know, or maybe not. The Canucks probably still want to see Spencer Martin as the goalie they want to develop. So they'll decide what's best for him. He earned the job to back up out of camp, but he clearly is not ready to do any more than that. So yeah, Delia's been better. Martin's been really bad. And Demko is traveling with the team. He could start practicing with the team this week, according to beat writer Patrick Johnston, which would mean, I guess, that, I don't know, he's a week or two away from being ready.
Yeah, and if you're going to stream in a Delia or a Spencer Martin, you've seen what could happen to you.
Yes.
Vancouver, not a great defensive team, and these goalies may not be NHL caliber starters. Remember when Colin Delia and Kevin Lankinen were like the two goalies on Chicago?
And there were moments for both of them, as with Alex Stalock. Like this is the history I'm pulling from, where you're like, could this guy be a legit number one goalie? Have they arrived?
So then you're going to really get annoyed at me when
you're
I
tell me how great Kevin Lankinen is.
I think Kevin Lankinen needs a shot. Okay, so he's been the backup on Nashville. He's doing very well. He has a 918 save percentage in his 10 games. Very small sample size. He did have a decent run on Chicago, though I know people have said those were like all games against like one. It was like all of his really good games were against like the same team that was like a weak team, and that skewed the numbers. Anyway, I think Lankinen did a smart job for himself. I think he owes his agent like a gift basket or something, because he took this job with Nashville, who's a team that protects their goalie, I guess, pretty well. And he's, not playing too much, but when he is playing, he's doing well. And I think I'll be interested to see. It was a 1-year contract. Curious to see where Lankinen will go next year. I think some team is going to take a shot on him. Maybe he will be a good starter somewhere. Like Chicago was a hard place to play. I don't know how much stock we should put into like him struggling in Chicago, like you said, you're not even interested in Stalock and he's doing well in Chicago. Okay. Anyway, just want to throw that out there. Let's go to some non-goalie talk now. Where should we go? Florida. I want to ask about Aaron Ekblad. Only 2 goals in his past 8 games. Both of those goals came in the last game versus Detroit. So though actually I think Florida played today. So yeah, they lost 5-1 to Dallas. Let's see, did Ekblad do anything on that one goal? No, he didn't. Brandon Montour got the assist on the Carter Verhaeghe goal. Are we getting worried about Aaron Ekblad here? So that means only 2 goals and no assists in his last 9 games. This is a guy who at one point we were looking at as like one of the higher end defensemen to draft, like maybe top 5, top 7. Florida, I guess, doesn't score as much as they did last year, but you'd think that Ekblad would be getting in on more. So what's going on here? Is this just like a random cold streak and time to buy low, or do you have reason to be concerned?
It's been a rough go for Aaron Ekblad. On the power play, everything's fine, but at 5-on-5, he has just 5 points in 30 games. And I think that's largely attributable, I think, to 2 things. The first is that he is participating on only 22% of goals scored at 5-on-5 while he's on the ice versus his usual like 40 or 45%. You aggress that, and Ekblad is involved in 10 goals this season so far rather than just 5. Still doesn't get him up to a 60-point pace, though. And I think the reason that it still doesn't get him up to a 60-point, or if you want to stretch that 70-point pace that we saw from him last year, is that there is less on ice offense this year in Florida. At 5-on-5, Ekblad's also playing 60 fewer seconds a night. So even though he's keeping up everything that he was able to do on the power play at 5-on-5, some bad variance, plus just not as successful an offense, is both those factors are knocking Ekblad below what we would have expected from him this season, which means I expect him to recover better. Like, I expect the next half of the season to be better than the first half was for Ekblad, but I don't think it's going to be all the way as good as it was last year. I'd be looking at about 55 or 60 point pace from him if all goes well the rest of the way.
So, does this mean you're higher on Devon Toews and Aaron Ekblad? Who would you take between the two if you had the choice?
That's a good question.
I feel like it's Ekblad for sure, but I know you're like higher on Toews than me.
Yeah, I think I'd take Ekblad because he's on the top power play. I think the downside for Toews is probably lower than it is for Ekblad. Ekblad also shoots some more, so I'll take Ekblad. But like points only, I don't think there's a huge difference.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Let's try to put a pin on that and check back in on Ekblad versus Toews. I think that's an interesting comparison. But yeah, it's a rare cold streak. I don't think anyone was expecting this cold of a streak. You got to imagine it's going to turn at least a little bit soon. Then I guess let's go. Okay, I said I had Edmonton and Philly guys to talk about. They weren't even that interesting. Like Klim Kostin has been playing with Connor McDavid, but he's pointless in 3. So you can just add him to the list of busts playing with McDavid. We were talking about Cam York and Philly. I was also going to bring up Travis Konechny, who scored again today. He's insane right now. I think he's over like 100-point pace or very close to it. Somehow like snubbed from the All-Star game. I don't get that, but nothing really to say here, right? Just Travis Konechny is a stud and you want him, and it's impressive that he's doing it with even not the most exciting line. It's like he's being centered by Noah Cates. It's
so impressive what Travis Konechny is doing. His shooting percentages returned after a couple bad years. He somehow has a power play point every 3 games, so 11 power play points for Konechny in 33 games. And I said somehow because he's doing this on the Flyers, who are ranked 29th in the league in power play conversion. They're converting at just 16% of their chances, and yet Konechny is one of the best points per hour scorers or points per game scorers on the power play. Like Philadelphia scored 19 power play goals this season. Konechny's been in on 11 of those, net 5-on-5. Konechny's basically in on 90% of the goals scored while he's on the ice. So basically, Travis Konechny is the team. And when you're hot, you're hot. Like, I don't know if a 99-point pace is sustainable the rest of the way, but I am really surprised and impressed that he can put up anything near that on a team that we weren't sure anybody could break a 60-point pace on this season. And I wouldn't put Konechny too far away from a point per game pace if I'm looking the rest of the season. So I don't know. I really, truly don't know how he's doing it, but he's doing it. And it's pretty amazing.
He is a skilled player. I think that's definitely helping him do this. He's incredible. Okay, let's do one more cold streak and then one more hot streak to finish off the show here. The cold streak, another defenseman similar to Aaron Ekblad, you would have expected more from the top power play, but Drew Doughty has really cooled off. He is pointless in his last couple games. Then he had 2 games with an assist, but before that he was pointless in 4. So that makes 2 points in his last 8 games, if I do my math, or 9 games even. So yeah, Adam H was asking us on our Twitter if Doughty is a snoozer at this point. How concerned are you? Like, he's down to 43-point pace on the season. Do you think maybe he's just a half point per game guy at this point?
Hold on while I bring up my notes from last week.
Okay. If a patron asks, I gotta deliver. They're paying customers, Brian.
Yeah, we talked about Drew Doughty last week and how he's having a disappointing season, especially because, he looked like he was going to be back to a 65-point pace, which he was last year over the course of half a season that he played last year. And what's happened with Doughty is that at 5-on-5, things just aren't going so well for him or the team he's on the ice with. His on-ice shooting percentage is down. His points participation is down. The offense, while Doughty's on the ice, is also down. I still think that he's better than this mid 40-point pace. Like, this is a heck of a cold snap for Drew Doughty. I think he should be north of 50-point pace the rest of the season if all goes well. And I still think he's a hold on or buy low kind of player. I wouldn't give up on him and think this is all we're going to see. It's not all we're supposed to see from him. It would be a real run of bad luck if it continued all the way through the year for Doughty this way.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And LA is looking good overall, right? So you would think he should be getting in on some more of these goals. Let's finish off with a question from Michael here in our YouTube chat. He wanted us to talk about Barrett Hayton. He is getting great deployment lately, playing with Keller and Schmaltz on the top line in Arizona, and he's producing. He has a goal today versus Pittsburgh, and he also had a couple multi-point games over the last couple of weeks. So Brian, obviously he's not the superstar that Arizona thought they were drafting 5th overall in 2018, but maybe Barrett Hayton is finally, maybe for the first time in the history of keeping Karlsson, rosterable in fantasy. Like, maybe we can finally say people could be considering adding Barrett Hayton for next week. Arizona plays 4 times. Hayton on the top line, definitely, and top power play. Definitely interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's the takeaway here. Barrett Hayton is playing with Schmaltz and Keller, and we've been interested in like Nick Ritchie there before, or Travis Boyd or Lawson Krause or any number of guys. And so why wouldn't we at least give Barrett Hayton a quick look here? There's also a very decent chance he ends up like Nick Bjugstad has, right? Like, who went on a nice little scoring run. It wasn't meant to be. And then that was it for him and our interest in him. So I think it's worth shouting out Barrett Hayton for kind of appearing back on the radar. Like, he's only 22. There's still time for him to make a career out of, whatever skills have gotten him this far as a 5th overall pick back in 2018. But I'm not convinced that there's a whole lot like that Hayton has arrived. But the fact he's on the top line, top power play, and has a little bit of production lately, more than he's ever really had at any point in his career, means that he is at least worth putting on your watch list. And a look, I think Arizona plays like an off day at the end of the week. So maybe he's good for a late week stream if you're in a close matchup.
Yeah, definitely before you add him, make sure you'll actually fit him in your lineup, as I discussed on the Matchup Maximizer podcast yesterday. Brian, that's it. We've gone through all of our content that we wanted to for this week. What a fun show. these 2 hours just always fly by. I've had a blast. Thanks so much for all of your expertise here. And thanks, of course, to everyone listening to the episode. Hope you enjoy it. Everyone here in the live chat, you've been amazing. Andy is throwing us an episode name suggestion of Love on Hayton Street, which I don't get the reference, but Brian's going to figure that out. And then maybe that's the name of the episode, or maybe Brian will come up with something else. But yeah. Brian, with that, what should I mention here? We got the Patreon, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. We'd love your support. It's a nice thing to do, I think, if you listen to a podcast and you enjoy it. Plus, we give a ton of perks, including joining our amazing community where we're helping each other be successful in fantasy. You can find us on Twitter at Keeping Karlsson. But with that, Brian, I am ready to get out of here. So let's cue the outro music. And why don't you read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters who are super and supporters of the show. They add a little more to get their name in the credits and also have a fancy color for their name on our Discord server. And they're also, they jumped to the top of the patron power rankings. So thanks, Adam, Aaron, Tyler, Andrea, Tom, Ryan, Derek, David, Rob, Ricard, and of course, Patty for being our super supporters. Of course, we appreciate all our supporters equally. You're all amazing. Anyone who supports us, thank you. All right, this episode was, thanks to Kevin Hebert and our team of Cupful co-commissions, helping the league keep running smoothly. And thanks to Shams and Elon for keeping all the content running on GameDayTweets.com. You can follow our Short Shifts show at Short Shifts KK. You can find Ben's taking a short break from the show, but I don't know if he's still checking the Twitter. Lewis probably is. Someone's there at Short Shifts KK. And we're excited to have Jeremy back to continue co-hosting the show over the next short while. Logo art by
so good. Great job, man.
So good. Logo art by BrandonWeave.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Check, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoldies.org, Hockey Reference, HockeyViz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and Yahoo.
Great job. As always, Brian. Looking forward to talking to you next week. Of course, in the meantime, we're going to drop a ton of shows into the feed. So make sure you're subscribed. And while everyone's enjoying all of our fantasy hockey content and hopefully doing well in their leagues, do you have any recommendations of other things they should have on their minds?
Yeah, I mean, if you could just always keep an eye and ear out for ways that you can help make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone, that would be phenomenal. Thanks.
Boom. Good job. That was a wild ramble at the end there about the super supporters. I'm not sure what
that was. I didn't have the list loaded. That was me. I was buying time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good job, Brian. Talk to you. Talk to you all in the Discord. See ya.
Thanks. Thanks everyone in the chat. I have to run tonight. You're trying to be cool, like you have to go, but I have to go.
Okay. Let's both
bye,
go.
Everyone. Thanks. Bye. And I'm glad so many people love Barrett's Privateers and Stan Rogers. Okay, but I don't know if most of our listeners get it. Andy, I'll look it up. I'll look up your reference.
Bye.
Are we online? Oh, we are still. Good.
Well, I'm just waiting